of the fact that the story of Naruto happens largely within the confines of Konoha, it can feel like that's the only village we ever learn anything about. However, that's not entirely true, which is why today I want to give you a rundown on the history and politics of all of the 5 major ninja villages, so you can know just about everything you would ever need to know about the ninja villages of Naruto. So with no further ado, let's get directly into everything you could ever need to know about the villages in Naruto. But before we get into all that today, I want to talk to you about the sponsor of today's episode, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Golden Spirit, a cross-generation JoJo's RPG where players assemble iconic characters from JoJo's Part 1 through 6 into a dream team to experience cinematic stand battles, all from the comfort of your mobile device. Coming to an app store near you August 13th.
正義の輝きの中にあるという黄金の精神
I know that pose. Listen, one of the most exciting things about this is not only the cross-generational nature of all of it, but like every different fighting style in JJBA we're gonna see. Whether you're a Hamon user, a stand user, anything, it feels as though they are prepped for it. Speedwag, baby! Oh my god. And I'm assuming these are the animations that everyone is gonna get here. Every individual character feels as though they have animations that are prepped for them and them alone. And with a story with as much character as JJBA, you'd kind of want that, right? Was that? I don't think it was. Oh boy, it was. So it doesn't matter if your abilities are just my body is mostly guns, we got you covered in Golden Spirit. Incredible. So if you're hyped from different characters of different parts of JoJo's all meeting each other, faithfully recreated stand powers, iconic poses, and the recreation of iconic moments through anime storytelling, then Golden Spirit is the game for you. Pre-registration is now available on iOS and Android, and Milestone Awards are reaching their final unlock phase as people from all around the globe are continuing to participate, with every player contributing, adding on to the final push of reward progression, with the ultimate milestone reward, SR Joseph Joestar, just on the horizon. So pre-register today on iOS and Android and join the final stage of Milestone Rewards and experience the first global JoJo mobile RPG August 13th.
The Hidden Mist, the home of the 7 swordsmen of the mist, Zabuza, Kisame, Yagura, the first Jinchuriki Kage. Sounds pretty cool, right? Well, unfortunately, it's not. And we know that largely from light novels. See, while some of the information I'm going to be talking about today does come from both the anime and the manga, a lot of the information we know about the Hidden Mist Village comes from Konoha Hiden, the light novel, Akatsuki Hiden, the light novel, and the first novel of Boruto. But actually, we have a while until we get to the points that any of those light novels bring up, because we're going to start this video in the way that we usually start these videos, at the beginning. The Hidden Mist was founded like all other ninja villages after the Uchihas and the Senjus decided to make Konoha. It was founded by the first Mizukage, Byakuren, who was said to have an incredibly high IQ, actually the highest of the first round of Kage. Outside of that, we don't know a lot about Byakuren. We don't know his abilities, his temperament, nothing. We know he was ugly, but that doesn't help us with anything. You see, we can assume that the village hidden in the mist was created much in the same way as the village hidden in the sand. For those of you who haven't seen my The Worst Village in Naruto video, essentially the way that the village hidden in the sand was created is that the first Kaze Kage rounded up all the nomadic tribes of the desert and brought them under his own roof. He essentially used the looming threat of Konoha's formation and his own strength and his ability to catch Shukaku to bring everybody together to live in one village. And while obviously Byakuren didn't catch his own tailed beast, it's widely assumed that he used his strength and intellect to bring all of the people that lived in the various islands around the Land of Water together in the village hidden in the mist. You see, because the Land of Water is 8 islands, 6 of which that are kind of small, 1 that is really small, and then 1 big main one. It's kind of like Hawaii. And while there's nothing wrong with being an island culture, in fact, it's good because it makes you hard to invade, in the ninja world, it's not particularly advantageous. Climate-wise, the Land of Water is incredible. It's got a bunch of really green trees, a ton of water, obviously. You could imagine it would be good for growing crops and sustaining life. And in fact, we know that growing things is easy in the Hidden Mist because on the tops of every building in the Hidden Mist, there's greenery growing. The fact that they're quite literally able to have urban gardens on top of their buildings points in a good direction for agriculture. But isn't this a video about how this is the worst place to live in the Narutoverse? Yes, so why am I giving it points? Because that's pretty much where the good things stop. So let's touch back on what I meant when I said that being an island in a ninja society wasn't advantageous. You see, just because the Land of Water might be good at growing trees doesn't mean that they can base their entire economy around that. The Land of Water has to find something to sell to keep their economy afloat. And even though they were founded by somebody who was hyper intelligent, they never became a manufacturing hub or a technology hub. But one thing that they did do particularly well was make powerful ninja. And that's fantastic because in the ninja world, having powerful ninja is not only good for war, but it's also good for peacetime. You see, a large part of the economy for any ninja village is ninja work. Essentially, smaller villages will hire you to send your ninja to their village to help protect them from something or fix something or basically any odd job. And the stronger your ninja are, the higher level of mission they can take on, which brings the village more money. So once again, kind of feels like I'm heading in a point for the Hidden Mist, but I'm not. You see, because even though the Hidden Mist has a lot of strong ninja, those strong ninja are really far from everything. And they're also really far from any small village that would need their help. You see, we never see anything in terms of like a high-speed boat until Boruto. We see like simple canoes and sailboats in Naruto, but there's no like ferry or anything like that. Which means that if any of the small villages on the mainland want ninja from the Hidden Mist to help them with their tasks, they have to basically ship them from the Hidden Mist all the way over to the mainland on a sailboat or a canoe. Now, we don't necessarily have the Naruto map to scale, but there is a fairly large distance of ocean between the Hidden Mist and the mainland. This kind of trip takes time, and a lot of the requests that you get for ninjas are not something that can be waited for. On top of that, the two nations closest to the Hidden Mist are the Land of Fire and the Land of Lightning, which are easily and without argument the two strongest villages in Naruto. So not only is the Hidden Mist far from all of the small villages that would need their help on the mainland, the two villages that are closest to those villages that would be asking the Hidden Mist for help are not only the strongest, but also the cheapest. So there is quite literally zero reason to reach out to the Hidden Mist for help with ninjas at all, which means that the Hidden Mist now not only had no manufacturing or technological advancements, they also had no ninja economy, which actually perfectly explains how they became the village they were. You see, when a place has no technological advancements, very little agriculture, and nobody giving them money for tasks, well, they're gonna resort to one thing and one thing alone. That one thing is plundering. We can look at Vikings in the real world for that. You see, Vikings grew up in a relatively barren place in society that very much pushed the strongest to the top. So because Viking warriors were so powerful, they were able to go elsewhere and plunder those places for their wealth and then bring that back to their own country. And this is kind of the place that the Hidden Mist became. You see, Byakuren either died shortly after the founding of the Hidden Mist village or during the First Great Shinobi World War. You see, this part of the Hidden Mist village's history is incredibly hazy to us. No pun intended. Technically, we don't even know if the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist were founded yet. See, we're only technically aware of two generations of the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist. There's the generation that Might Dai fought and killed the majority of, and then the generation after that, which was referred to as the strongest generation of the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist. I mean, obviously we can assume that the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist existed before the generation that fought Might Dai, but we just don't know for sure. The reason I bring this up is because we don't know the full military might of the Land of Water in the First Great Shinobi World War. We do know, however, that the Mist got absolutely shafted in the Tailed Beast split up. Yes, the Hidden Mist did get Isobu, who is one of the stronger Tailed Beasts. He has incredible defensive capabilities in his shell and is able to curl himself up in a ball that he can roll at people at high velocities to basically kill them instantaneously. However, for their other Tailed Beasts, they got Seiken, the Six Tails, who is a slug. with the ability to blow bubbles. Saikin, even though it has 6 tails, is easily the weakest of all of the tailed beasts. And while just the simple act of having 2 makes you believe that the hidden water probably got it better off than the sand, who only got 1 in Shukaku, may not be correct. When it boils down to it, the feats we've seen from Shukaku versus the feats we've seen from Isobu and Saikin, Shukaku actually might be stronger than both of them combined. Specifically when you take into account the fact that Shukaku has magnet release. A magnet release that Naruto used to quite literally bind Madara. While a lot of the other tailed beasts had their own Kekkei Genkais like magnet release, boil release, lava release, or giving their Jinchuriki the ability to fly, like with Chomei, the 7 tails, neither Saikin nor Isobu conferred any particularly cool or unique ability to their Jinchuriki. I mean, yes, Utakata could blow bubbles, but who is that helping? The argument that Shukaku was more helpful for the hidden sand also makes a lot more sense when you consider the fact the only reason that people in the hidden sand are able to control gold dust or iron sand or sand in the first place is because of their research they did on Shukaku's ability to control sand. So in terms of what the villages got out of their tailed beasts, I'd say the hidden sand got significantly more out of Shukaku than the hidden mist got out of either Saikin or Isobu. That's basically all we know about the military might of the hidden water going into the First Great Shinobi World War. And we don't know a lot about the First Great Shinobi World War except for those who died in it. You see, Byakuren, like I said earlier, either died before it or died during it. Byakuren was very old at the first 5 Kage summit, so the possibility that he died before it isn't insane. But we know that he died during it or before it because the second Mizukage, Gengetsu Hozuki, died during the First Great Shinobi World War. How do we know this? Well, because Gengetsu, the second Mizukage, and Mu, the second Tsuchi Kage, killed each other. They killed each other during a war. We don't know during which war specifically. But when both Gengetsu and Mu are brought back during the war arc, they believe that the person who's bringing them back is Tobirama, which leads us to believe that they died before Tobirama because they thought that Tobirama would still be alive to bring them back. You getting the logic? So if Gengetsu and Mu died in a war and before Tobirama, that would have to mean they died in the First Great Shinobi World War, which would mean just like Konoha, the Hidden Mist, lost 2 Kage in that war. But here's the thing. Tobirama died at the end of the war. If Gengetsu died before Tobirama, that could mean that he died at the beginning of the war or the middle of the war, which would mean that the third Mizukage would still have to deal with the First Great Shinobi World War. The third Mizukage, whose name we do not know, is the person largely responsible for the creation of the foundation of the Blood Mist Village. You see, in the first 5 Kage meeting, every single Kage brought the person who was going to succeed them, except for Byakuren, who brought the third Mizukage. You see, Gengetsu Hozuki, who I've covered when I covered the Hozuki clan, was incredibly powerful and also very likable and very passionate about the Hidden Mist. You see, the Hozuki clan have a Kekkei Genkai specific to their clan called Hydrification, which allows them to turn parts of their body into water, effectively making them completely invulnerable to physical attack. That's an insanely powerful ability. It's just like Obito's Kamui without a Sharingan that can eventually go blind. So more likely than not, essentially as Byakuren was dying, he realized that the village would be best if it was left in the hands of Gengetsu and not the third Mizukage. Most likely Byakuren, in his infinite knowledge on his deathbed, realized that the third Mizukage wanted a blood-soaked village that only cared about the strong, while Gengetsu offered the best possible version of the Hidden Mist to the Hidden Mist. Think about Gengetsu becoming Mizukage like if an Uchiha was chosen to be Hokage, because the Hozuki clan was an incredibly powerful and important clan in the Hidden Mist Village. So by electing somebody from that clan to be the leader of the Mist Village, you have now made the strongest clan in the village happy. The only problem is Gengetsu's tenure as Mizukage was about as long as Tobirama's tenure as Hokage. They both inherited a war that would kill them, but Tobirama's death makes sense. Gengetsu's doesn't. Gengetsu and Mu battling in the First Great Shinobi World War makes quite literally no sense. We touched on earlier that the closest villages to the Hidden Mist are the Hidden Leaf and the Hidden Cloud. But if you look at the Naruto map, the Hidden Mist is quite literally as far from the Hidden Stone as you can be. Not only is the Hidden Mist on an island, once you get to the mainland, you would have to march through 6 or 7 small countries if you want to avoid the Land of Fire or the Land of Lightning to get to the Hidden Stone. So why were these 2 countries fighting? I literally cannot wrap my head around it. There's nothing to be gained from either of them by fighting. Because mind you, at this point, the Land of Fire and the Land of Lightning are fighting. That's why Tobirama went up to the Land of Lightning to sign a peace contract where he was jumped by the Gold and Silver brothers, which would mean that the small villages that either the Hidden Stone or the Hidden Mist would have to go through would be a battlefield between the Hidden Fire and the Hidden Lightning. So inherently, the Hidden Mist would have to fight either the Hidden Fire or the Hidden Lightning. And yet, Gengetsu and Mu only hated each other. I mean, they knew of Tobirama's existence and abilities, so there's a solid possibility that they fought Tobirama at some point or another, but they had a long-standing beef that stated they fought multiple times. So the only assumption that I can make is that the Land of Water went all the way around the Land of Lightning to get to the Hidden Stone on a backside port attack, or that the Land of Water wanted to pillage the small villages that were being caught up in the battle between the Land of Fire and the Land of Lightning and happened to bump into the Land of Stone there. Regardless, out of the first Great Shinobi Worlds War, the only thing the Land of Mist got was a lot of dead bodies and dead Kages. Specifically, the dead Kage who was supposed to be their hope for the village. And in my personal headcanon, I believe this is when the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist were founded. The Hidden Mist realized that their military might was not up to snuff with any of the villages they were fighting. And thank God for the Hozuki clan, which allowed them to fight on par with the Hidden Stone, but they had lost the most important person in the Hozuki clan. So now, just like losing the Uchihas, you couldn't depend on the Hozuki clan to defend you, but they had an idea. You see, directly between the Hidden Stone and the Hidden Mist, if you're to take the small village route, is the Land of Iron. See, the Land of Iron is where all of the samurai in the Naruto universe live. I believe that maybe in some of these battles between the Hidden Mist and the Hidden Stone, some samurai were involved. And after seeing the military might of the samurai and their ability to funnel chakra into their blades and how important their blades were to them, they came back with the ideology that Kenjutsu, aka blade work, was very important for military might. They might have even kidnapped some of those samurai swordsmiths and forced them to make Seven Swords of the Mist. You see, because we don't know how the Seven Swords of the Mist were created, like at all, which is weird considering the fact that the majority of them quite literally defy physics. I mean, one of them is quite literally just an endless scroll of explosive seals that come from nowhere. So how and why were these made? A lot of people attribute it to the third Mizukage because he's a shady character that we know very little about. We literally don't know his name. So the third Mizukage, wanting to increase the military might of his now kind of failing nation, decides to create weapons of semi-mass destruction. And when you think about how the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist are branded in Naruto as a group strong enough to overturn an entire nation by themselves, it kind of makes sense. You see, why would you need a group of ninja capable of overthrowing an entire nation? Well, one, because the Hidden Mist are inherently plunderers, and two, because they were your only military might. So in order to keep their relevance in the world sphere in terms of military might, they made the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist.
But Nick, the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist are incredibly cool. Shouldn't that be points for the Hidden Mist?
Well, not really. See, because the only way you would ever be able to join the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist would A, to be incredibly powerful, but B, to be in the correct caste. What do I mean by be in the correct caste? It's a good question. You see, unlike basically every single other ninja village, the Hidden Mist had a caste system from the second they were founded. For those of you who don't know what a caste system is, essentially it's when a society creates buckets that people fall into. And what bucket you fall into is dictated by a bunch of different terms, but it's largely based on family lineage, influence, money, and power. And while you're probably saying to yourself,
Well, yeah, all society sort of has that.
a caste system dictates that those in different castes don't intermingle, date, marry, any of that. And the Hidden Mist has had that since the very beginning. Now, this isn't information that we learned in the anime or the manga. We actually learned this in Kakashi Hiden, which takes place about 2 years after the war arc, and it's about Kakashi stepping into the role of Hokage. But essentially, Kakashi learns that in the top caste, there is families that originally descended from the first people who moved into the Hidden Mist. So people like the Hozukis or the Hoshikakes. In the middle caste, there was families who were allied with the Hidden Mist in previous battles. And then in the lowest caste was those who were defeated in those battles and then annexed into the Hidden Mist. So at the very top, we have those who founded the Hidden Mist. In the middle, we have those who fought alongside the Hidden Mist. And at the bottom, we have those who fought against. But this caste system stays in place. So if many generations ago, your family fought against the Hidden Mist, you are still in the lowest caste. And if you are in that lowest caste, you will never become the Mizukage or a 7 swordsman of the mist. You need to be from a prestigious family like the Hosoki or the Hoshigage. In fact, if you are part of the lowest caste, you are not only handled with caution around the village, you are given the most dangerous and perilous missions in the village because they don't care if you die. This is to keep the lowest caste occupied, but also to stop them from revolting. You know what they say, an idle mind is the devil's playground. So now we have a village of plunderers who just lost their golden child from the top caste, and the village was handed over to a maniacal sociopath who wanted to create 7 mystical swords to allow his swordsmen to plunder small villages for their wares. But the hits don't stop rolling there, because with the rolling in of the 3rd Mizukage began the founding of the Blood Mist Village. Yay, we got there finally! You see, the story of the Blood Mist Village is actually a bit different in the manga than it is in the novels. See, in the manga, we get a sort of overview of what was thought to be the Blood Mist Village and how it acquired that name. But the novels paint a slightly more detailed view of what the Blood Mist Village was like. You see, we found out that it gained the name of the Blood Mist Village because in the Shinobi Academy in the Hidden Mist, aspiring shinobi had to kill each other in order to become a shinobi. And only those who survived killing their fellow shinobi were ever able to become a shinobi. But this seems wasteful. I mean, a lot of those shinobi could be relatively promising. There could have just been a genius in their class who killed them all. And it was actually the novels that told us that this wasn't necessarily what happened. Yes, there was children killing children in the Shinobi Academy to become shinobi, but it wasn't all of the children. No, it was actually just the lowest caste. See, if you belonged to the highest caste or the middle caste, you didn't have to kill or be killed to become a shinobi. You could just go about the Shinobi Academy like a regular person. But if somebody from the lowest caste wanted to become a shinobi, all of them were kind of thrown into a room, and those who came out alive got to become shinobi. Now, this system was implemented by the 3rd Mizukage. You see, because a lot of people falsely attribute the creation of the Blood Mist Village to Yagura and Obito, or even to Madara. The thing is, Yagura didn't become the Mizukage until after the conclusion of the 3rd Great Shinobi World War, and things were very bloody before that. You see, because at some point during the 3rd Mizukage's reign, Madara dipped his finger into the Hidden Mist Village. You see, essentially, Madara began to secretly manipulate Hidden Mist events. Madara essentially saw the weakness in the desperation of the Hidden Mist Village and thought it was the perfect place for him to start making plans. Specifically plans on how to get Obito to be on his side. You see, because during the 3rd Great Shinobi World War, it was believed that the Hidden Mist kidnapped Rin and then planted Isobu inside of her as a plot. But in reality, this was a plot formulated by Madara, and this plot was devised in order to get Obito to be allegiant to Madara. But after Rin is kidnapped, Kakashi is sent to get her back, and once Kakashi gets her back, the Hidden Mist sends a group of shinobi after her. However, this group of shinobi is entirely for looks. You see, the Hidden Mist wanted Rin to be taken back, and then upon Rin's return to Konoha, Isobu would crash out of her and destroy a majority of Konoha while the Hidden Mist invaded. She was, in effect, a Trojan horse. However, Rin knows this, and therefore when Kakashi saves her, she asks Kakashi to kill her. However, since the Jinchuriki of Isobu is now dead, Isobu pseudo-dies. Essentially, if the Jinchuriki dies, the chakra of the tailed beast essentially just reforms somewhere else. And once Isobu reforms somewhere else, the Hidden Mist recaptures him and puts him in Yagura. This was most likely done because Yagura was a powerful and strong member of a first caste family, that family being the Karatachis. And as a member of an upper caste family, and now the Jinchuriki of the more powerful of the two-tailed beasts that the Hidden Mist has, Yagura was elected to be the 4th Mizukage. We don't know if this is because the 3rd Mizukage died or what. Like I said earlier, we know very little about him. But we do know a lot about Yagura, specifically how bad his reign was for the Hidden Mist. But here's the thing, the bloodiness of his reign was not necessarily his fault. Yagura was never a good guy. He came from an upper caste family, he had Isobu planted in him when he was very young, he was set up for failure. However, a short time after Madara's death, Obito decided to put Yagura under genjutsu. You see, Obito blamed the Hidden Mist for Rin's death. I mean, he also blamed Kakashi, but Kakashi was harder to get to. So Obito put Yagura under a genjutsu so complete, Yagura didn't even know he was under genjutsu. In fact, this genjutsu is so similar to Kodowa Matsukame that Tsunade pondered if Obito and Shisui were related. Now, the genjutsu that Obito put Yagura under wasn't like he was constantly seeing crows or he was in Tsukiyomi. Genjutsu just trumped up Yagura's worst side and also made him listen to Obito. Essentially, Obito's whole goal was to destroy the hidden mist from the inside out. Obito made Yagura trump up how much blood was required in the Shinobi Academy. Children now from all caste systems were being forced to kill each other in the academy. Obito also forced Yagura to bring people into his upper ranks that Obito knew were corrupt. And therefore, as time progressed, the upper caste of the hidden mist became heavily corrupted and power hungry, which caused them to look even further down upon the lower castes and exploit and plunder from those in their very own nation, when prior it had only been something they did to other nations. Because of this, defection became a widespread pandemic in the Hidden Mist. In fact, defection from the Hidden Mist became so common that the Hidden Mist had to make its own section of the Anbu called Hunter Ninjas, or Hunter Nin, whose entire job was to hunt down people who had defected from the Hidden Mist. And defectors weren't just people from the lower castes. No, in fact, many members of the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist who resided in the highest caste and Udakata, the Jinchuriki of the Six-Tailed Saiken, all defected. These were important upper caste people who were leaving the village in droves. In fact, the practices of the village got so bad that one year in the Ninja Academy, Zabuza killed the entire graduating class. And the craziest bit about this is Zabuza wasn't a student in the Ninja Academy yet. Essentially, in order to show that he himself was valuable and powerful, he killed an entire graduating class of shinobi who were older than him. Shinobi who had to kill those around them in order to graduate in the first place. And this earned him the Demon of the Mist title. But because of the blood that Zabuza shed and the way that the village was trending, the academy stopped forcing the students to kill each other. But by this point, the Blood Mist Village was already labeled just that, the Blood Mist Village. And the reputation of the fourth Mizukage was cemented. Ironically, Zabuza, the person who spilt more blood than any other aspiring shinobi in all of the Blood Mist Village, was the first person to speak out against it. Many years after Zabuza became the Demon of the Mist and the Ninja Academy changed its rules, Zabuza actually led a coup against Yagura. This coup was actually done specifically to kill Yagura, because Zabuza and a lot of people in the Hidden Mist Village felt like the Blood Mist Village was happening because of Yagura. And to a small degree, they were correct. It was happening because of Yagura, but Yagura was doing it because of Obito. Unfortunately, this coup failed, and we actually didn't know why it failed until Shikamaru Hiden. In Shikamaru Hiden, we learned that Zabuza's coup failed because one of his men betrayed him. But here's the thing, their coup failing technically was a good thing, because if you remember, Yagura wasn't really the problem here. And in fact, after Zabuza's coup failed, Ao, who was a hunter nin as part of the Anbu and fought a Hyuga and killed them and then stole one of their Byakugan, returned to the village. We believe Ao fought a Hyuga clan member during the Third Great Shinobi World War, and that's where he acquired his Byakugan. Regardless, Ao has always been a day one for the Hidden Mist Village. That's why he was a hunter nin. You have to really love your village to specifically join the group of people who only hunt people who have defected. However, when Ao returns with the Byakugan, which he cannot deactivate because it is not his own Kekkei Genkai, upon looking at Yagura, he realizes that his chakra network is disrupted. And it's at that point that Ao realizes that Yagura is under Genjutsu and is finally able to break him out of it. However, nobody is able to ascertain where that Genjutsu came from. And after Yagura was broken out of this Genjutsu, he became a better person, but unfortunately he didn't have a whole lot of time to be that better person. Unfortunately, while he was under Genjutsu, there had been so many defections from the upper ranks that the only sword left of the Seven Swords of the Mist was the Split Sword. All other 6 swords had gone with defectors from the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist. Because all of them had defected, the only person left was Chojuro, and obviously the organization fell apart. But if none of that is enough to convince you that you don't want to live in the Hidden Mist, there's also a couple of other internal conflicts that happened over the duration of the Hidden Mist's history. For those of you who remember OG Naruto fondly, you'll also probably remember what is a lot of people's favorite character from OG Naruto, Kimimaru. And if you remember Kimimaru, or you like Kimimaru, you'll remember his backstory. See, Kimimaru came from a clan called the Kaguya clan, and some people in the Kaguya clan were born with an ability called Shikatsumyaku, also known as the ability to grow bones out of their body. Kimimaru could go so far as to pull his spine out of his own back and use it as a sword, or to shoot bones out of his fingertips like bullets. Kaguya clan were far-off descendants of Kaguya, and therefore were bloodlusted, crazy human beings. And the only thing that the Kaguya clan wanted in life pointless battle. Well, the Kaguya clan was also located in the Land of Water. However, as the era of shinobi advanced, the Kaguya clan did not get behind the movement. And as they saw the power gap start to increase between them and the Hidden Mist village, which is the closest representation of ninja culture, well, they got a little angry. So one day, without any planning or regard for human life, they invaded the Hidden Mist. And while at first the invasion went very well for them because the Hidden Mist wasn't expecting it, Hidden Mist got collected and killed every single one of them, except Kimimaru. This wasn't the Land of Water's only squabble with those who had Kekkei Genkai. In fact, those who had Kekkei Genkai, specifically clans who had Kekkei Genkai in the Land of Water, are often frowned upon. Actually, frowned upon isn't even the right word. They're often murdered. If you remember Haku in the Yuki clan story, they had an ice Kekkei Genkai. Essentially, they were able to create and control ice. And because of this Kekkei Genkai and how powerful it was, they were incredibly efficient and powerful in war. However, regular shinobi didn't like that. Regular shinobi were intimidated by their Kekkei Genkai, and therefore, oftentimes, those who came from the Yuki clan or any clan that had a clan-specific Kekkei Genkai would get murdered just for being from the clan, and therefore the Yuki clan had to separate. You see, the Yuki clan still exists. There's still people out there with the Ice Kekkei Genkai, but they don't use it anymore because they're afraid they'll get murdered in the Land of Water. And you could say,
Nick, well, this same thing happens with the Uchihas in Konoha.
and while the sentiment is similar, they're very different. You see, the Uchihas got killed because Danzo thought they were a threat. More specifically, because Danzo saw brewing unrest in the Uchihas and decided to cut out the growth before it turned into a tumor. The Yuki clan were murdered because they were too helpful in battle, which is insane when you think about the fact that the Hidden Mist is a plundering group of power-hungry individuals trying their best to destroy other nations to survive on their wealth. Yet, they're killing the people with the Kekkei Genkai that can help you achieve those goals. But like I said earlier, the Blood Mist village was on its way out. Specifically, Yagura was on his way out. Juzo and Itachi were sent to the Hidden Mist village to grab Yagura. And while Yagura is strong enough to kill Juzo, he's not strong enough to kill Itachi. And for that, we cannot fault him. However, after the death of Yagura, the 5th Mizukage takes over, Mai. And with the 5th Mizukage, the Blood Mist village starts to enter the rear view. See, I think the Mist village was the worst village to live in for a long time. However, after Mai takes over, it quickly becomes actually one of the better villages. So Mai begins to reform internal policies, like, hey, we don't kill children anymore, and tries to change the broad image of the Hidden Mist village to an open-minded country. People believe that the Akatsuki, who are going around nabbing Jinchuriki and have already grabbed both of the Hidden Mist Jinchuriki, was founded in the Hidden Mist. So Mai has to go to a 5 Kage summit and tell everybody that the Akatsuki was not formed in the Hidden Mist and that she will go so far as to join the Shinobi Alliance against the Akatsuki. And then after the Akatsuki in the 4th Great Shinobi World War I, the Hidden Mist image is kind of redeemed. But it wouldn't be until the 6th Mizukage, Chojuro, was elected that the Hidden Mist would find its economy finally. Modernization was achieved through a collaborative effort of Chojuro and Mai. In fact, the Hidden Mist became so modernized that it's actually more modern than Konoha. In just about a decade after the 4th Great Shinobi World War, the Hidden Mist has achieved technological advancement and become a tourism hub. Remember when I said they're similar to Hawaii? That's because they are, in both being an island and temperate-wise. And therefore, they've become a very hot spot for tourism in the Naruto world, which is weird to think about, but it's true. On top of that, they've managed to retrieve the 6 blades that were lost to defection. This was kind of mostly done by Suigetsu, but that's neither here nor there. Because they now have all 7 Swords of the Mist, they were able to reinstate the 7 Swordsmen of the Mist. And because of the modernization and the tourism money, the Hidden Mist has actually become an incredible place to live, filled with very happy people. But it's kind of like Germany post-World War II, where the majority of the population looks very sourly on their past. But there is a small group of people who want it to be the way that it was. But fortunately, those people got washed by Genin, so we don't really have to worry about them. And just like that, we have the entire history of the Mist Village. I genuinely think the Mist Village represents one of the more interesting arcs in Naruto. How a village founded with good intentions can turn evil in the face of some unfortunate events, and then can re-find its way to good through collaborative effort. I think the Hidden Mist speaks to the human spirit more than any other village in Naruto. And that's why I was super excited to make a video about it today. And there's less than 10 years between the Uchiha Massacre and the events of Naruto's Part 1. So yes, it's obvious and very clear that the Hidden Sound Village wasn't formed as a response to the Senju and the Uchiha coming together to make the Hidden Leaf. But it doesn't necessarily address the personal aspect of this hidden village. And to address that point, we have to talk about the difference in reasoning between the founding of all the other ninja villages and the Hidden Sound. See, like I said earlier, all the other ninja villages
villages that have been founded were either in order to make sure that the Uchiha and the Senju could coexist peacefully, or make sure that the Uchiha and the Senju didn't get too strong to take over where we currently live. But that was not the reason that the Hidden Sound Village was founded. See, because the Hidden Sound Village was created for Orochimaru and Orochimaru alone. To be more specific, Orochimaru created the Hidden Sound Village with the express interest of collecting as many powerful ninjas as possible to examine and figure out the truth behind all taijutsu, ninjutsu, genjutsu, senjutsu, and all the other jutsus. That is to say that Orochimaru didn't found the Hidden Sound Village so that the area of the Land of Sound would be strong enough to battle against bigger, badder forces. The Hidden Sound Village wasn't created on the mission to peace or to deter possible warring entities from taking over their land. This village was founded for Orochimaru's scientific interests, and that is it. And because of that, in the timeline of Naruto, Otogakure isn't actually seen as a legitimate village. Well, yes, they have things like a country, a hidden village, a daimyo, and shinobi. They aren't recognized by all the other major villages as a legitimate village until the events of Boruto. And technically, this moment doesn't even happen in Boruto's manga. See, because when Mitsuki as a character is introduced in the first couple of episodes of Boruto, when Boruto was adapting its prologue light novels, it was established in Boruto episode 5. Now that Orochimaru's chilled out on the whole human experimentation thing, except not really, because, you know, Mitsuki, Log, and all the other Mitskis, that Orochimaru has managed to create a truce between Konoha and the Hidden Sound Village. And now the Konoha has acknowledged the fact that the Hidden Sound is a village, it is treated with the same level of legitimacy as any other hidden village. But does that mean that people live there, or is there a daily life of your average Hidden Sound shinobi? Does Orochimaru rule over them as the Odo Kage? And if they do, how would they do that from the confines of a laboratory in Konoha? Well, in order to answer those questions, we have to go over the history of the Hidden Sound Village. Yes, we've established the fact that it's a legitimate village now, but what was it before Orochimaru got to it, merely 10 or so years prior to the events of Naruto? Well, in order to answer those questions, we gotta go back to the beginning of the Hidden Sound Village and explain the lie that Orochimaru sold to the citizens of the Land of the Rice Fields. See, because here's the thing, the Land of Sound was not always the Land of Sound. It used to be the Land of the Rice Fields, which is why when we see panning shots of the Land of Sounds, it's covered in rice paddies, and therefore is a largely agricultural, small country on the border of the Land of Fire. The Land of Rice Fields didn't have a hidden village prior to Orochimaru wandering in there. And this isn't uncommon in the Naruto universe. Smaller countries that aren't focused on militaristic ventures, like the Land of Hot Water or the Land of Rice Fields, will either have a very small hidden village that is at constant risk of being dissolved, or just not have a hidden village at all. Because while on the surface, a hidden village might just seem like a buzzing metropolitan area that people can live in the Naruto world, a hidden village is more like a military base than anything. Yes, a lot of things can go on inside of these hidden villages that have nothing to do with shinobi, but the existence of a hidden village, and therefore a Kage, denotes the military presence of the country they're inside of. Because after all, a Kage simply exists as kind of general supreme of whatever hidden village they're ruling over, with the daimyo actually holding all of the political power and the finances. And therefore, Orochimaru, after they were expelled from the Akatsuki, invaded and conquered this small agricultural country, and after doing so, forced the daimyo into allowing Orochimaru to set up their own hidden village. But that doesn't mean that there was no military presence inside of the Land of Rice Fields. In the anime, it was established that the Land of Rice Fields was actually home to many lost and forgotten shinobi clans. Shinobi clans who had been used for combat in a hopeless war. Now, as to what war that is, we don't necessarily know. Timeline-wise, it would make the most sense that it would be the Third Great Shinobi World War, but that's never established. It just established that the Hidden Rice Fields participating in this war at all, even with the help of all these shinobi clans, was a hopeless endeavor. Because the Hidden Rice Fields was involved in this war, and because all of these clans were their fighting force, all of the clans that fought on the side of the Land of Rice Fields suffered greatly, losing more than 50% or so of their clan. And because of this, the Land of Rice Fields was ripe for Orochimaru's reaping, as many of the shinobis from these lost clans felt as though they needed somebody to rally behind. And Orochimaru's incredible power and promise to revive these lost clans back to their former glory allowed all of these lost soldiers living inside of an agricultural country to feel as though they had importance again. And to be honest, Orochimaru crafted a hell of a lie, as when Orochimaru initially founded the Hidden Sound Village, they claimed that they founded the village so that skillful shinobi could find purpose in life without being beholden to the warmongering ideologies of the 5 great shinobi nations.
nations. See, Orochimaru identified that the land of rice fields was involved in the conflicts of the 5 great shinobi nations, and like so many other smaller nations, they got trampled in the process. And this is especially true for nations that exist on the border of the land of fire, as other bigger, badder nations like the Hidden Stone or the Hidden Sand have to traipse through their nation to get to the land of fire for their giant wars. Unless Orochimaru's appeal to all of the citizens of the land of rice fields was 1, I'll revive your clans, 2, I'll give you purpose, and 3, I will keep us out of the conflicts of the 5 great shinobi nations. And thus the land of sound and the village hidden in the sound were formed. But here's the thing. Calling the village hidden in the sound a village at all is kind of misleading. See, the village hidden in the sound isn't a village in the same way as the village hidden in the leaf, the clouds, the sand, or the stone. It's not just one major metropolitan area focused somewhere in the center-ish region of a country. In fact, the village hidden in the sound isn't even in its entirety located in the land of sound. See, because the village hidden in the sound is a network of bases and laboratories that are scattered about both the land of sound and other countries. Yeah, the land of sound is more akin to a giant series of caves than it is an actual village. And those giant series of caves that lead to different hideouts and different laboratories can pop up in other nations, like the land of fire. And thus, there's not really one place to pin down as the village hidden in the sound. Any base or laboratory that Orochimaru has created exists as an extension of the village hidden in the sound. And thus, the militaristic forces of the village hidden in the sound are spread all across the world, kind of. And as we saw in the Konoha Crush arc, there is a fair amount of hidden sound shinobi. Whether they be the Jonin that Kabuto led into combat during the Konoha Crush, or the Genin of Team Dosu who were able to join into the Chunin exams. There was multiple generations of ninjas who felt as though they'd been disrespected by the world while they still existed as a land of rice fields. And therefore, Orochimaru immediately after conquering the land of rice fields had a very active and very willing army. But little did the shinobi of the land of sound know that Orochimaru wasn't truly all that interested in making them into their army. See, in actuality, the real reason that Orochimaru decided to galvanize all of the shinobi of the land of rice fields is so either Orochimaru could experiment on them or to explorative deep dives into their jutsu to figure out the tips and tricks behind how to use them. And thus the real reason that basically everybody from the Hidden Sound seems to have some kind of weird augmentation to their body, whether that be Dosu's sound wave gauntlets or Zaku's hand air tubes, is because the majority of the people from the land of sound, at least the ones with names and faces we know, were augmented by Orochimaru in his human experimentations, as Orochimaru was trying to use an entire population of people to try and figure out how to make shinobi stronger, to test the validity of certain jutsus and ideas that Orochimaru had thought up. And as the now pseudo-Kage of an entire nation of people with a daimyo powerless to move against you, Orochimaru's experimentation victims grew exponentially. And while it felt as though after the Konoha Crush arc and the taking of Orochimaru's arms by Hiruzen, the Hidden Sound village kind of disappeared, there was actually 2 separate villa arcs in part 1 of Naruto that happened after the Konoha Crush arc that focused not only around the land of sound, but also the people that came from there. And thus we learned more specifically about 2 separate clans from the land of rice fields that were tricked into believing Orochimaru's lies when he took it over and turned it into the land of sound. And those 2 clans were the Shin clan and the Fuma clan. Now the Fuma clan were introduced first, as their filler arc took place around episode 140 of part 1 of Naruto. The Fuma clan was a populous clan within the confines of the land of rice fields, and therefore they made up a solid and very present part of Orochimaru's fighting forces. On top of that, they had a hidden jutsu that Orochimaru was very interested in mastering and being able to mass produce. But not all of the clan bought the lie that Orochimaru was selling. See, because when Orochimaru came into the land of rice fields, the clan actually split into 2 separate factions. There was the faction that believed that Orochimaru would be able to return their clan to its former glory, and the faction that didn't believe the lie and therefore went into a life of criminal activity within the confines of the land of sound. Now, the faction that did join Orochimaru's side were used in their human experimentations, as Orochimaru tried to slowly but surely figure out the truth behind their hidden jutsu. See, because while the Fuma clan was known for using chakra threads, you know, the thin lines of chakra that connect to your fingertips that puppet users use in the Naruto universe, the much more interesting jutsu that the Fuma clan had access to that Orochimaru wanted to know more about was their curse mandala, a technique that traps somebody in an ever-shrinking pyramid. And with time, as this pyramid gets smaller and smaller, you turn that person into a pyramid-sized meat cube. And for all intents and purposes, this is a very powerful and very scary technique. And while it was only taught to certain generations of the Fuma clan, that was enough for Orochimaru to try and sink their teeth into this clan to try and strip all the possible knowledge that they had away from them. Outside of the Fuma clan, we were also introduced in way later in part 1 of Naruto, around episode 210, to the Shin clan. Now, the Shin clan was a much smaller clan than the Fuma clan. However, they were famous inside of the land of rice fields for their
their high ideals and determination. Now, when Orochimaru founded the Land of Sound, every single member of the Shin Clan joined up. However, eventually the daimyo of the now Land of Sound stopped hiring the Shin Clan for jobs, and thus the Shin Clan had to find a new way to support themselves, and thus they set their eyes on a gold mine that existed on the border of the Land of Sound. Now, the Shin Clan had a very interesting, though minorly useful technique. A technique known as the memory blocking technique, which essentially just allowed them to erase another individual's memories. And while that could absolutely be useful in a bunch of different ninja situations, to me it just seems kind of silly. Now, outside of that, really all we know about the Land of Sound is the different bases that Orochimaru and Kabuto popped up in over the course of Naruto and Boruto, of which we know about 8 between the anime and the manga. The first and most prevalent of all of those bases is what's known as the Land of Sound base. Now, this is the very classic Orochimaru base that we see with the giant staircase that leads underground, and the base that Orochimaru returned to after having their hands sealed by Hiruzen. This base was destroyed in the anime when Naruto, Sakura, and Jiraiya invaded it and ended up battling against a guy by the name of Arashi, and it's from that arc that we learned about the Fuma clan, so it was in this base that the Fuma clan existed. After that, there was Orochimaru's hideout in the Land of Grass, also known as Kusagakure. Now, this is just one of Orochimaru's bases that has a gigantic snake in it. It's more notably known as the base where Sai attempts to kill Sasuke, and the base where Naruto and Sakura come face to face with Sasuke after the 2-year time skip. Now, the battle that ensues between Team 7 at this hideout ends up destroying a part of this hideout, and thus after this fight, this hideout is abandoned. But more likely than not, this is where Sasuke spent the majority of the time skip. After that, Orochimaru has the Southern Hideout, an island that presumably exists off the coast of the Land of Waves that's filled with prison cells and wardens who keep eyes on prisoners that Orochimaru is locked up. We know about this place because this is where Karin was locked away prior to joining Hebi. There's also the Northern Hideout, a hideout where Orochimaru did the majority of his cursed seal human experimentations, because this is the hideout closest to Jugo's clan's origin and where Jugo was kept. And for those of you who don't remember, Jugo's clan's ability to naturally pull in cursed energy was the foundation with which the cursed seal was built. After this, there's the Eastern Hideout, a hideout that had a snake's mouth as an entrance. Gee, I wonder who this could belong to. And within the confines of this hideout, Suigetsu was kept. Now, based off geographical patterns, it appears as though the Northern Hideout is somewhere in the Land of Stone, and the Eastern Village is somewhere near the Land of Water. This would make sense when we consider the fact that Suigetsu is known to be from the Hidden Mist Village. After that, jumping way further into the future, there's also the Abandoned Hideout that Kashin, Koji, and Boruto are currently using as a home base, which may be one of the previous hideouts that we've listed, but we just don't know. And then Orochimaru has 2 separate private island laboratories. The Just Island laboratory that Kabuto is usually at because it's the most medically advanced out of all of the laboratories, and the Demon Island laboratory, which is from an anime-only arc located on the Demon Island of the Land of the Sea. But apparently in this laboratory, Orochimaru was trying to create the ultimate underwater ninja. And with that, that's basically everything we know about the Land of Sound and its hidden village. And while yes, that may seem like a lot of information relative to all of the other important hidden villages, it's scraps. In fact, the majority of the things that we know about the village hidden in the Sound come from filler arcs. And now that the Hidden Sound has been established as a legitimate village, we know the least we've ever known about it. Are people still living in the hideouts and laboratories created by Orochimaru? Was there a real village being established? Does Orochimaru ever get to go back there? And if not, who's in charge? These are all questions that we're probably going to be left with forever.
So Iwa, or the village hidden in the stone, how did it get that name? Well, the village hidden in the stone is quite literally hidden in stones. The entire village's infrastructure is built out of the surrounding rock and mountains. And these rocks and mountains are used to make tower-like buildings that everybody lives in. And all of these towers are connected via bridges. In this sense, it's a bit like the ancient rock towers we see in central Turkey. These are ancient human dwellings that the first settlers in Turkey carved out of the mountain in order to live in. And these kinds of structures are very difficult to make. You essentially have to chisel your own living room. Imagine making a room this big, but with Stone Age tools. However, if the Three Little Piggies taught us anything, if you build a house out of stone, it's gonna be there for a while. And this, combined with the fact that all of Iwa is surrounded by a mountainous region that is incredibly hard to cross through, it makes Iwa basically a stronghold. It would be incredibly difficult for an invading army to enter Iwa. They would either have to climb all the way over basically sheer cliff mountains or go through one of the very few roads into Iwa. And if the movie 300 taught us anything, a road can be pretty easily defensed. And the fact that Iwa is such a stronghold is actually a point of pride for many of those in Iwa. Because remember, this is a village basically obsessed with war, but they know any offensive movements they make outside of Iwa will never really come back to bite them, because it would be almost impossible for an occupying army to take Iwa. This is especially true of the Tsuchikage's building, which is the tallest building in all of Iwa and has the kanji for earth on the side of it. It is also directly in the center of Iwa to make it the hardest to get to. But how was this village built and why was it built? Well, to talk about that, we're gonna have to do what we usually do in these kinds of videos and start at the beginning. Iwa was founded during the Warring States period, like every other ninja village. It was formed to defense against the foundation of Konoha. Because with like every other village, once you see the Uchiha and the Senju have decided to play nice, well, you better get your act together. And it was founded by the first Tsuchikage. You see, we only technically know the first Tsuchikage's first name, Ishikawa. However, a couple of filler episodes in Naruto Shippuden pointed us in the direction of his last name. You see, these filler episodes were about the Kamizuru clan. And the Kamizuru clan is a bit like the Abarames of Iwa. Essentially, instead of beetles, they used bees. And if I'm being entirely real, I much prefer the way that they deal with their insects. You see, while the Abarames have their beetles live inside of them and feed off their chakra, the Kamizuru simply summon their bees to the battlefield. And these bees are actually very dangerous. They can shoot their stingers, which contain poison at targets. Once they're injured or killed, they release honey that globs onto their opponents that can immobilize them. They can even grow to gigantic sizes so large that you need a Rasengan to take them out. And they also don't have much concern for their lives, and neither do the Kamizuru, because the Kamizuru often have them carry explosive tags to explode their opponents. And the bees. But why am I talking about the Kamizuru? Well, because in these filler episodes and in the novel that the Kamizuru clan appeared in, they said that Ishikawa was actually a Kamizuru. And this actually lines up really well with the story that the novel and the filler episodes are trying to tell. Because as they state that the Kamizuru were once one of the proudest clans in all of Iwa. They stated that they were well known and revered amongst their peers. However, that's no longer the case. As to why that's no longer the case, we'll crack into in a second. First, we need to talk more about Iwa's history. See, obviously we've talked about Iwa's founding and its geological location. See, unfortunately, the first thing that happened to the Hidden Stone Village wasn't the most positive thing that's ever happened, but it also possibly could be taken that way. You see, because the first thing that we're going to talk about happening in Hidden Stone is Madara going to the Hidden Stone in order to fight Mu and Inoki. You see, essentially Madara thought that all other ninja villages should be subservient to Konoha because Konoha was the strongest. And because of this, he went to the Hidden Stone to order them into subservience. This simple act actually gives us a little peek into Iwa's history. You see, because we know that Madara went to this village prior to the First Great Shinobi World War, because Madara still went as an affiliate of Konoha, and the First Great Shinobi World War didn't happen till long after Madara was dead. However, what's weird about this event is that it's Mu and Inoki who fight Madara and not the first Tsuchikage. You see, Mu was the second Tsuchikage and Inoki was the third. And we know for a fact that Mu dies in the First Great Shinobi World War, so this points us to believe that before Madara gets there, but after the founding of Iwa, Ishikawa dies. Now, this is not a big time frame. Madara stayed in Konoha 2-3 years max, which means that almost as fast as Iwa was founded, the founder died. Wait, no, because he was at the first 5 Kage summon. Madara was already dead by then because Hashirama had all 9-tailed beasts. Okay, take back everything I said. For some reason, he just decided he wasn't gonna fight Madara, which fair. Regardless, we're talking about Madara pulling up to the Hidden Stone, and why that's important. You see, we don't know whether or not Madara went to any other village. The only confirmed village he went to order subservience was the Hidden Stone, which points us to believe that there's a possibility that the only village that Madara thought was a legitimate threat enough for him to make a personal appearance was the Hidden Stone. And there's reasons to believe this. If we do truly assume that the first Tsuchikage was a member of the Kamizuru clan, that implies that he was as strong as a high-level Aburame, which is nothing to scoff at. But then when you consider the fact that next in line to be the second Tsuchikage knows a Keke Tota, which can delete things on a cellular level, and Ishikawa's own grandson is also learning that Keke Tota. These are the kind of things that could intimidate a new village like Konoha and Madara. Otherwise, why personally go only to the Hidden Stone? And to that end, after Madara did go to the Hidden Stone and beat up Mu and Inoki, why did the Hidden Stone decide to still go to the 5 Kage Summit? Which is the next thing that we have to talk about historically. Well, here's the thing. Madara might have been right to be intimidated by the Hidden Stone. And not just because of their sheer power and willingness to do anything for the Tsuchikage, for their sheer cutthroatedness. You see, there is no village out there with morals as gray as Iwa. And this could have something to do with sleeping inside of a rock every night or a myriad of other things, but when it comes down to it, Iwa will do anything to be victorious. Now, this wasn't entirely clear for a long time and became more apparent down the line, because at the 5 Kage Summit, Ishikawa was incredibly cooperative, stating that he came in good faith to endorse the meeting of the 5 Kages. However, he stated he wouldn't sign anything so easily, which is why he flew into a rage when the first Kaze Kage demanded that everybody give them 30% of whatever they were going to pay to Hashirama for the tailed beast. But after Hashirama made his plea for peace, Ishikawa accepted 2 tailed beasts, Son Goku the 4 tails and Kukyo the 5 tails. And if we're being entirely real, they received some of the stronger tailed beasts. Ironically, they got 2 of the fire tailed beasts that the Land of Fire didn't take for themselves, but they had Kurama, so why worry? Son Goku is able to use lava release, which is the combination of earth and fire release. So in that regard, Son Goku was fitting for the Land of Stone. And Kukyo uses boil release, which is the combination of fire and water release in order to boil water and create steam. And using this steam, she could superheat her Jinchuriki's chakra and essentially boost all of their physical abilities, as well as allowing them to create steam that can burn through Jin cloaks. Getting 2 of the tailed beasts who have their own Kekkei Genkai is kind of crazy, especially when you consider the fact that only 3 tailed beasts have Kekkei Genkai, and this simply bolstered the strength of the stone. However, this was a bad idea for Hashirama, because within closed doors, the Hidden Stone was working on a myriad of forbidden jutsus. Well, some were forbidden and some were just secret. Ishikawa himself created a bunch of scrolls that were secret jutsus for his B release. However, we can't say that Ishikawa was fully without conscience, because he knew that these bug tamer abilities were so strong, he hid them from his own clan, which, with the combination of his death, was most likely the first step of the Kamizura clan taking a step down, in terms of prestige, that is. Him having a conscience is also bolstered by the conversation we've seen between him and Inoki, which, by the way, if you think Konoha's nepotism for Hokage is bad, look at Tsuchikage. Ishikawa is Inoki's grandfather. Inoki is Horotsuchi's grandfather. I almost forgot her name. But we get to see a conversation between Ishikawa and Inoki when Inoki was very young, when Inoki was cleaning the stone monument in the center of Iwa. And Ishikawa told Inoki that this stone monument is meant to represent the unmovable toughness of an Iwa shinobi. Essentially, this was their will of fire, the will of stone. And this is something that we actually do truly see in most Iwa shinobi, because they believe that living without this immovable toughness in your soul will lead to a life of lies and excuses. Iwa shinobi are not only immovable and tough, but they're also fiercely loyal. And this is largely where their strength comes from. Essentially, anything they're told to do that comes from their Tsuchikage, they will do even if it results in death. At the core of any Iwa shinobi comes a blind allegiance to Iwa. And this is something that we see painted very clearly throughout all of their conflicts, which were with the Hidden Sand. You see, the Hidden Sand and the Hidden Stone share a border. So whenever warring time came around, usually the Hidden Stone and the Hidden Sand would fight. Which is why all throughout Naruto we see Hidden Stone and Hidden Sand Ninja hate each other so much. And this is why the Hidden Stone is involved in every single Great Shinobi World War. However, their opponents weren't only the Hidden Sand. In fact, in the first Great Shinobi World War, they found themselves across from the Hidden Mist, which makes quite literally 0 sense. The Hidden Mist and the Hidden Stone are as far away as 2 countries can be within the Naruto world. But they were fighting. And how do we know they were fighting? Because the person who had taken over for Ishikawa as the second Tsuchikage was Mu. And Mu was Tsuchikage during the first Great Shinobi World War, which implies that more likely than not that Ishikawa actually died during the first Great Shinobi World War, or at some of the skirmishes that led up to it. Regardless, we know that Mu was the Tsuchikage during the first Great Shinobi World War, because we know that Mu and Gengetsu killed each other. And we know that Mu and Gengetsu died before Tobirama, who died in the first Great Shinobi World War, which means that Iwa more likely than not lost 2 Tsuchikage in 1 war. Something that happened to both Konoha and the Hidden Mist village, but something that is still incredibly jarring to a relatively new village, which is more likely than not where they gained their proclivity for sneakiness. You see, somewhere down along the line, and right now is probably the most credible time along that line that Iwa gained this proclivity, Iwa decided to undercut all the other villages, even in times of peace. And here's the thing, we know for a fact that Mu also believed in this sentimentality, because when he was reincarnated, he told Inoki to take control of the world after the 4th Great Shinobi World War in order to capitalize on the collective weakness of the ninja world. They were always thinking of ways to cut throats and step on toes. foes. So by holding that sentimentality and then also losing 2 Tsuchikage in one war probably ramped it up to 11, which is how we could find Iwa doing things like working with the Akatsuki in the far distant future. They hired the Akatsuki as mercenaries. But we'll get to their sneaky track record and how it pertains into the modern ninja world in a second. For now, we need to talk about the Second Great Shinobi World War, which once again, Iwa was involved in. However, by this time, Inoki was Tsuchikage. You see, the Second Great Shinobi World War was arguably the smallest out of all of them. It was just the Hidden Stand, the Hidden Stone, and the Hidden Leaf, all fighting each other in the Hidden Rain. Because unfortunately for the Hidden Rain, it shares a border with all 3 of those countries. So in order to sneak into each other's countries, they were trying to cut through the Hidden Rain. However, what's interesting about Iwa's involvement in the Second Great Shinobi World War is that Hanzo talks about fighting Granny Chiyo and talks about fighting the legendary Sani. So that would be the Hidden Sand and Konoha, which also lines up with basically everything we know about the Second Great Shinobi World War. It's where Hanzo fights a legendary Sannin, it's where Sakamoto Hatsuki kills Sasori's parents, it's where Tsunade learns how to counter all of Granny Chiyo's poisons, it's where Tsunade loses her little brother and her lover, it's where the Ame orphans are orphaned. So with all of that, we have the events lining up with the Hidden Sand, Konoha, and the Hidden Rain. And yet there's no historical context to even necessarily tell us that the Hidden Stone was involved in this war other than the fact that it says the Hidden Stone was involved in this war. And why do we think that is? Well, to dive into that, we have to look at the reason that the Second Great Shinobi World War even started. After the First Great Shinobi World War, there was an economic disparity. Essentially, rich countries like Konoha were fine, but poorer countries like the Hidden Sand and the Hidden Stone weren't. You see, obviously the First Great Shinobi World War had been insanely devastating to the entire ninja world, and because of that, a treaty was signed for 20 years. But after those 20 years, the economic gap between rich and poor countries continued to grow, and this is why we see the parties involved. There's a reason we didn't see the Hidden Cloud or the Hidden Mist here, because economically, they're fine villages, specifically the Hidden Cloud. There was a reason that the Hidden Stone and the Hidden Sand were trying to invade Konoha: fertile land and money, 2 things that the Hidden Stone and the Hidden Sand didn't have. Okay, but that still doesn't explain why we never really saw the Hidden Stone in this war. Well, that's because the Hidden Stone are scavengers. They weren't gonna fight in a war that they couldn't win. And upon seeing Hanzo the Salamander hold off Granny Chiyo and the legendary Sannin, they realized that it was a war they weren't going to win. Because after they would have to get through Hanzo the Salamander, they would have to get through Konoha, who at this time were revolutionizing medical ninjutsu and recreating what a ninja team meant. And in fact, the only way that they were truly gonna be able to get through Hanzo the Salamander was more likely than not working with the Hidden Sand, who they hate more than anything. So more likely than not, their involvement was most likely just undermining the Hidden Sand and hoping that the fallout or the collapse of the Hidden Sand village would result in them being able to take it over. But of course, this is just speculation. But why do I call Iwa scavengers? Well, for a couple of reasons, actually. The first reason would be their involvement in the Third Great Shinobi World War. You see, the Third Great Shinobi World War was basically the entire world against Konoha. I'm not kidding. Basically everyone except maybe the Hidden Cloud village was trying to invade Konoha. The Hidden Mist had their Asobu plan with Rin. Oh wait, no, I lied. The Hidden Cloud was absolutely trying to invade Konoha because Minato and A and B all fought. The actual true one village that may not have been involved in a fight against Konoha would be the Hidden Sand, because we know this is the war where Sasori became Sasori of the Red Sand, which implies, at least to me, that Sasori was fighting a defensive battle because he was standing on sand. In fact, the fact that Sasori participated in the Third Great Shinobi World War is the only reason that we know that the Hidden Sand was even in the war. Which leaves us with one village and one village alone: Hidden Stone. Resonate with what I said earlier, that the Hidden Stone wouldn't enter a battle that they couldn't win. Think about that for a second. And when you think about it, the fact that they were involved in this war against Konoha makes a lot of sense. You see, there was no better opportunity to take down the strongest village other than when they were fighting a war on every other border. They had ninja in the Hidden Mist, they had ninja in the Hidden Cloud, and now if the Stone were to attack with the full front of their force, they would have their final and best opportunity to break into Konoha. And so they did exactly that, sending tens of thousands of ninjas into Konoha. And for a while, they were actually winning this war. That was until the Battle of Kanabi Bridge. You see, this battle where Obito died is often usually flipped right over. However, this mission for Team Minato was quite literally make or break for Konoha. Essentially, the overwhelming numbers of Iwa and the fact that Konoha had to fight on so many borders was pushing Konoha down. But Iwa was getting all of their supplies into the land hidden in the grass with one bridge, and that bridge was the Kanabi Bridge. With that bridge destroyed, destroyed, Iwa's supply line would be cut off, and Konoha would be able to kill all of the ninja still left in the land hidden in the grass. However, this was an incredibly difficult mission that shouldn't have been entrusted to Genin, especially Genin, who don't have Minato with them. But Genin or not, they actually managed to figure it out, and Kanabi Bridge was destroyed, and therefore the war swung in Konoha's favor. But think about this from Iwa's perspective. This is their one opportunity to take over Konoha, or at least take a part of it. Iwa is all mountains. Its entire economy is based off ninja work, which they're not gonna get from the Hidden Sand because the Hidden Sand hates the Hidden Stone. And Konoha has the cheapest ninjas around, which means all of the small villages between the Hidden Stone and Konoha are gonna hire Konoha. Without this fertile land and the strengthening of their nation as a whole, they don't stand a chance economically, which is why even after Kanabi Bridge was destroyed, they continued the war effort. Even in the face of sure defeat and after signing a peace treaty, mind you, because after Kanabi Bridge was destroyed, Iwa essentially surrendered and signed a peace treaty. After they signed that peace treaty, Inoki sent in 1,000 shinobi to re-invade Konoha. However, these 1,000 shinobi were all killed by Minato, just Minato. And it wasn't until that moment that Iwa gave up. You see, this points us in two directions, two things that I've been talking about this entire video. That Iwa shinobi have an unmovable, tough attitude towards everything, and that they're incredibly underhanded. In the face of defeat, 1,000 shinobi marched to their deaths. And they did it at an absolutely underhanded and evil time. And unfortunately, the Third Great Shinobi World War signaled the end for the Hidden Stone. 1,000 men being defeated at the hands of one person is enough embarrassment. But when you stack on the fact that they lost the war to a country that was fighting a war against 3 other countries, well, that's also pretty tough look. Because of this, Iwa's most prestigious clan wanted to gain their honor back. Well, Iwa's honor, that is. Of course, I'm talking about the Kamizuru clan, the clan that Ishikawa belonged to, the clan of beekeepers. Several years before the events of Naruto, so most likely after the events of the Third Great Shinobi World War, the Kamizuru clan tried to invade Konoha, most likely to make up for the shortcomings of the Third Great Shinobi World War. However, they were soundly defeated by the much more experienced and powerful Aburame clan. And because of this defeat, the Kamizuru clan lost all respect and notoriety within Iwa, and eventually most of them died out. This was until the events of Naruto Shippuden, where the last remaining members of the Kamizuru clan tried to find the scrolls left by Ishikawa, the scrolls that contained his secret beekeeping jutsu. And on top of looking for these secret scrolls, they were also looking for the Pikachu. The Pikachu is the beetle with the long nose that's incredibly good at smelling. However, while the Kamizuru clan was looking for these secret scrolls in the Pikachu, they were defeated by Hinata and Naruto, slicing open an already open wound even further, and essentially extincting that clan. And this was a far fall because most of the battles led by Iwa into Konoha were led by the Kamizuru clan. However, the Aburame clan was unfortunately for them always there to counter them. This too led to the decline of their notoriety and respect within Iwa, because within Iwa, strength is paramount. But now that we've closed on the Third Great Shinobi World War, we're basically within the events of Naruto. So I'd like to take this opportunity to flesh out what I said earlier about Iwa being underhanded. Like I touched on earlier, Iwa is one of the only major villages to hire the Akatsuki to do missions for them as mercenaries for things they don't want to be held accountable for. This was done by Inoki, who hired the Akatsuki to murder enemies of the state so his own shinobi wouldn't die, and he admits to this openly. But since we're talking about the Akatsuki, there's obviously also the forbidden jutsu that Deidara stole. Deidara stole a forbidden jutsu from Iwa that allowed him to knead his chakra into clay. This jutsu also comes with the ability to open a mouth on your chest and put that clay in there and cause an explosion of unforeseen magnitude. As to why Iwa felt the need to make a jutsu like this, we don't know. Not to mention, even when Iwa says they're allies with someone, they're always liable to stab you in the back. Like when Iwa and the Hidden Mist teamed up together in a mission against the Hidden Cloud. In this anime-only arc, Iwa actually goes on to assassinate all of the Hidden Mist shinobi that were with them on this mission in an event called the Tragedy of Yasuga Pass. They killed all of these Hidden Mist shinobi so they could take all of the spoils of the mission for themselves. And to touch on the point earlier when I said they were scavengers, after the Konoha Crush arc, Iwa moves on to invade Konoha until they're thwarted by the eternal Genin Kusuke Marabushi. And this attitude persisted all the way until the Fourth Great Shinobi World War. The reason that they joined the allied shinobi forces was to undermine all the other ninja villages in this war. It wasn't until Gaara sat Inoki down that Inoki realized that Iwa had lost its way. And in the war, Inoki took it upon himself to be as involved in every single battle as to set an example for all the other Iwa shinobi. Because for as long as they've existed, there has never been cooperation between them and other villages. And if there was cooperation, you killed them at the end of it. Even in Boruto, Inoki went on to create Akuta, which were essentially sentient earth golems, because Iwa was attacked by a rogue shinobi and multiple shinobis died from it. So against the will of quite literally everybody in the ninja world, Iwa went on to do illegal scientific research after the era of peace was established, all in order to make sure that their shinobi would be safe, but at the same time almost creating a cataclysmic event. Now, say what you will about Iwa, I genuinely believe that they are the closest representation of real-world government we've ever had. Their willingness to do anything and undercut anybody for the furtherment of their own goals is very realistic to what real-world government does every single day. Because of that, I find them as a village incredibly perplexing and interesting. We get to look at them as a viewer and understand that they're a reflection of reality, and that ironically, it wasn't one singular event that made them greedy and underhanded, and that it's been there forever, intrinsically in their governing system. Mu wanted Inoki to undercut the ninja world's vulnerability after the Fourth Great Shinobi World War. Mu, who's been there since the founding of the village. And while other external factors, like the fact that they couldn't beat Konoha in a fight or Madara coming to kick down some doors, might have influenced how they decided to govern, at the end of the day, it's always been a part of who they are. And therefore, they stand out to me as a perfect reflection of what government is. A military industrialization complex meant to make people who don't say no to orders, backed with the intentions of stealing anything they can when they can. And that's why talking about the Hidden Stone is one of my favorite things to do in all of Naruto. The village hidden in the sand actually has a pretty well documented beginning. You see, after the Warring States period ended and Hashirama and Madara decided to shake hands and create Konoha, it put other ninjas into a bind. Now two of the strongest clans on Earth have come together to form an alliance, meaning that hypothetically, if we do not band together and create villages of our own, we will get crushed. And that was actually exactly what Madara wanted to do after forming this alliance with Hashirama. So the formation of the 4 other major ninja villages was purely defensive, but the formation of the Hidden Sand village was arguably the hardest to pull off. You see, the Land of Wind is all desert, and during the Warring States period, there was just nomadic clans that wandered around the Land of Wind, and they were ninjas. You see, the Land of Wind is so large and so splayed out that ninjas often wouldn't bump into each other. There wasn't a lot of infighting. There wasn't wars in the Land of Wind like there was between Hashirama and Madara's respective clans. But because of this, there was also no alliances, no allegiances. There was just kind of ninjas spread about an entire country. But with this kind of freedom also creates a kind of person who doesn't want to bow down to others. Why should I join up with you? What if you take the charge? This is actually where our first person of import comes in, Redo, the first Kazekage. You see, Redo was dauntingly powerful. He came from an era where shinobis were forged in the flame of battle and was still a cut above. You see, it's stated in his databook entry that he used his overwhelming power to gather the desert-dwelling shinobi of the Land of Wind. Essentially, he demonstrated to all the people of the Land of Wind that his power was so significant that people should stand under him, that under his rule that they would stand a chance against other shinobi villages if they came together. Now, we don't know Redo's abilities. We just know that his power was strong enough to unify the entire country. Now, that's a feat that's a bit easier than what Hashirama or Madara had to do in the Land of Fire, but still very significant. And while we don't know the feats that led up to Redo becoming the first Kazekage, after he became the first Kazekage, we have a very tangible feat that he pulled off. You see, when Hagoromo made the 9-tailed beast out of the 10 tails, he put them in specific locations. And in the Land of Wind, he placed Shukaku, the 1-tails. Now, say what you will about Kurama teasing Shukaku for only having 1 tail and thus implying that Shukaku is the weakest because of his 1-tail status, there is no actual lore in the Naruto verse that says that tails relate to power outside of the fact that Kurama is the most powerful. Regardless, Shukaku is a very powerful entity, an entity that Redo caught. See, when the first ever 5 Kage summit was held, Hashirama had captured 8 of the 9-tailed beasts, and he was offering to sell them to the other Kage to promote peace. Kind of a mutually assured destruction approach. But there was one problem. Redo had already caught one of the tailed beasts, so he didn't need Hashirama's handout. In fact, he demanded that because he had caught his own tailed beast, that he got a cut of every single one of the tailed beasts that Hashirama sold. On top of that, he wanted part of the Land of Fire's fertile land. This is one of the most ridiculous asks in the history of business deals. Yes, Redo caught a tailed beast. Congratulations, you're talking to a guy who caught 8. And once again, we don't know Redo's abilities, and obviously Hashirama's abilities are built exactly for capturing tailed beasts. Wood release suppresses tailed beast power. So sure, maybe Redo was able to pure strength Shukaku down into a seal, or maybe he had help. Regardless, just because you caught your own tailed beast doesn't mean you should get a cut of mine. Just say you don't want a tailed beast and I won't sell you one. But then again, Hashirama wasn't selling these tailed beasts to make money, he was selling them for peace. And Redo was basically saying, well, if you want me to be peaceful, you're gonna have to pay me, because I don't need what you're handing out. Redo actually makes a couple of good points here, essentially saying that my country is entirely infertile. We are a landlocked desert country which has no promises of agricultural advancement. So please, just give me fertile land and we'll be cool. Now, Hashirama essentially just says, please, can we all get along? And I think Redo might actually back down. We don't really see how the summit concludes. But Konoha didn't hand over any of that fertile land, and none of the Kage seemed like they wanted to hand over 30% to Redo. So maybe he just packed up and went home? Which is actually probably why we fell into the First Great Shinobi World War in the first place. Yes, obviously, Hashirama was able to sell some of the tailed beasts to the other nations. But the Hidden Sand basically walked away with nothing and no incentive for peace. And a war could provide to them the fertile land that they need. Because I'll remind you that the Land of Wind and the Land of Fire are right next to each other. Since we're talking about the Land of Wind just as a whole and not about the people that grew up in it, let's talk about the Land of Wind for a second. Redo nailed it directly on the head. The Land of Wind is an infertile, hostile place to live. It's a desert. But Redo also says something interesting during this 5 Kage summit. He calls the Land of Wind desert locked, which I assume to be kind of close to landlocked, meaning that they do not have a coast or any access to water. And here's the thing, that's kind of a weird point. Let's talk about it. So on conventionally accepted Naruto maps, the back end of the Land of Wind is never seen. It's because almost every single map that we get is just a square. So we see the part of the Land of Wind that leads to Konoha and the Hidden Stone because it's in the southwestern corner. But it appears as though there's ocean to both the south and the west of the Hidden Sand. But we don't see this ocean, which makes me believe there might actually be more land behind the Hidden Sand, or that the Hidden Sand doesn't have access to the ocean in one way or another, which would really take the only saving grace for either their economy or their agricultural systems away from them. So as a country, you're a desert with no water and no ocean. And on top of that, to your north is the Hidden Stone, and to your east is the Hidden Fire. Now, the Hidden Stone is one of the few villages we really haven't covered in depth yet. But the Hidden Stone, out of all the villages in Naruto, has the largest standing army. And while very few ninjas of true regard have spun out of the Hidden Stone, they are still a very formidable and offensively minded nation. You see, the Hidden Stone is fundamental in basically any shinobi great war. And then to your east, you have the Hidden Leaf, which is just flaunting all its fertile land around, and is also probably the strongest village out there, especially in the era of Redo. So you're not strong enough to expand because you can't increase your military might because you don't have the economic or agricultural means to do so. So what do? Well, you can still try, and that's what they did. Fortunately, the one thing that the Hidden Sand has going for it is that it is located in a desert, and therefore is very hard to attack. It is very hard to march an army of people not used to a desert across a desert. Not to mention that the Hidden Sand itself is actually stuck between 2 very large cliffs, and the only way to get in is a tight tunnel. So it's almost impossible to attack from the ground. So the Hidden Sand could launch offensive campaigns and not worry about having them come back at them, which is more likely than not what happened during the First Great Shinobi World War. See, we don't really know what happened during the First Great Shinobi World War. We know the Hidden Stone and the Hidden Mist were in a battle, and we know the Hidden Cloud and Konoha were in a battle. It's somewhat implied that the Hidden Stone and the Hidden Sand were in a battle because the Hidden Stone and the Hidden Sand have hated each other forever, and the Hidden Stone and the Hidden Sand had documented skirmishes that led up to the First Great Shinobi World War. So to assume that they made it official during the First Great Shinobi World War is not the craziest assumption of all time, especially when you consider the fact that Redo almost definitely died during the First Shinobi World War. How do we know this? Well, we don't, technically, but we do know a couple of things that lead us in that direction. See, there's a curse on the Kaze Kage. Not only are they cursed to lead the weakest village, which has no agricultural or economic means of its own, they are all cursed to die at the blade of an assassin. As to why, I don't know, maybe because they treated Shukaku so poorly, but we know for sure that both the 3rd and the 4th Kaze Kages were assassinated. And it's stated several times that all Kaze Kages had been assassinated, implying that both the 1st and the 2nd were. Then you take into account the fact that Rasa, the 4th Kazekage and also Gaara's father, was in charge of the Hidden Sand by the time the 3rd Great Shinobi World War came afoot, which would mean that both the 2nd and the 3rd Kazekages would have to have ruled and died before the 3rd Great Shinobi World War, which gives us about 30 years. So my personal headcanon is that after the Hidden Sand realized that this war was draining what few resources they had, they decided the one person who's probably the reason that this war started because of his refusal to join the peace treaty should probably go, and thus he was assassinated, and the Hidden Sand withdrew from the First Great Shinobi World War. But here's the thing, your leaders dying left, right, and center to assassins is also not great for building the strength of a village. Think of the turmoil that Konoha was tossed into when Hiruzen was killed by Orochimaru. Hell, think of the turmoil that happened when Tsunade fell into a coma. Being a major village with a power vacuum is a big deal. And when it's the standard amongst those who lead you, that's not good. But if there was one person who did succeed in bringing a little bit of stability to the Hidden Sand, it was the second Kazekage. You see, the second Kazekage focused on what he believed was important: military might. Shimon, the second Kazekage, realized we're probably not going to be selling crops or any major exports, and thus we have to focus on one thing and one thing alone: shinobi missions. You see, smaller villages will contract ninja villages to complete shinobi missions, and then that money gets refunneled into the economy of the shinobi village. The only problem is you have to be able to do that work cheap and effectively. And to offer cheap and effective labor, you need strong shinobi. And you also need a lot of shinobi. You see, the Sand is not a populous region. In the data books, out of 5, its population is rated 2, the lowest out of the 5 major villages. But then again, its economy and its military are both rated 2s as well, also the lowest out of the 5 villages. Shamon wanted to fix this population issue. And since they couldn't produce enough food to produce a bolstering population, what he did was look into puppets. You see, there was a man in the Hidden Sand by the name of Monzaemon Chikamatsu, the creator of puppetry within the ninja world, and also a famous Japanese playwright famous for his puppetry. Shamon saw Monzaemon Chikamatsu using his puppets to entertain the masses and found a way to apply that to military might. Essentially, Shamon figured that if you could have one ninja controlling 10 puppets, he is now 10 shinobi. And this was actually incredibly effective. So effective that an entire brigade called the Puppet Brigade was created. And these puppeteers were able to stay off the front lines and have literal lifeless clones do all their battle for them. This both increased military might and reduced casualties. But this isn't all that Shimon achieved. Shimon also started studying the Jinchuriki that they had within the Hidden Sand. You see, since they caught Shukaku, he had been forced into a Jinchuriki who had been forced into jail. Essentially, both Shukaku and his Jinchuriki were forced inside of a teapot for the entirety of their existence. Shukaku was never treated well in the Hidden Sand. But Shimon was interested in the abilities of Shukaku, specifically his magnet release. So he actually created a team of scientists within the Hidden Sand to investigate Shukaku's magnet release. And surprisingly enough, they were able to reverse engineer Shukaku's magnet release by the time the third Kazekage came around. Yeah, the third Kazekage was not born with magnet release. He figured it out by investigating Shukaku. And with that magnet release, he was able to control Iron Sand, effectively making him the strongest Kazekage ever. Gaara's stronger than him now. But when they first said it, he was, in fact, the strongest Kazekage ever. And for a while there, things looked really good until the Second Great Shinobi World War came around. You see, at this point, the military might of the Sand had increased exponentially. The Puppet Brigade, led by Granny Chiu, was one of the most effective killing machines ever created. Granny Chiu went head to head against Hanzo the Salamander and the Hidden Leaf and everybody, basically. And her myriad of poison knowledge that allowed her to extrapolate and create new poisons that were incurable, on top of the fact that she had 10 of Monzaemon Chikamatsu's best puppets of all time, made her an unstoppable killing machine. Not to mention the fact that the Hidden Sand just became the first people on Earth to reinvent a Kekkei Genkai. Things look good. Only problem is they got dragged into the Second Great Shinobi World War, and Granny Chiu wasn't strong enough to defeat Hanzo, and all of her poisons kept getting countered by Tsunade. And all of the military might progress they had made seemed to get undone by villages making just as much progress as them. Imagine how aggravating that is. You come from a deserted, infertile land. You have gone all in on military might, and the best weapon you have, Granny Chiu, who is formidable as hell, isn't enough to get you even the smallest bit of fertile land. You lose to the small nation between you and the Hidden Fire. And not to mention, Sakamo Hatake is absolutely tearing your country to shreds. While the legendary Sannin are in the Hidden Rain fighting Hanzo the Salamander, Sakamo Hatake, Kakashi's father, is leading an offensive campaign in the Hidden Sand, and it's going quite well for him. In fact, it's going so well for him that this is where he earned his moniker, the White Fang. Do you remember how when those 2 Hidden Stone shinobi saw Kakashi, they were afraid that he was his father, and they started to retreat because Sakamo Hatake had a run-on sight order? Yeah, that's because he wasn't only in the Hidden Sand, he also went to the Hidden Stone. But how do we know that he was in the Hidden Sand? Well, mostly the fact that he killed Sasori's parents, who, by the way, were 2 incredibly strong shinobi. So now, not only has the Hidden Sand failed to make any progress offensively, defensively, their line is falling apart as well. And Shimon dies. How exactly? We don't know, but we know it's an assassin's blade. I like to think that once again, the village was not very happy that somebody who said, we're gonna bolster the military might of our village and thus diverted resources away from everything else, was now seeing absolutely no return on investment. And in fact, there's a guy out there with a chakra saber cutting down people's parrots. And so they killed him in order to promote his bodyguard, the guy who just reversed engineered the Kekkei Genkai of Shukaku and could now control Iron Sand. So now your village, which is already starting in a really rough spot, has been on the losing side of 2 straight wars. You've lost 2 leaders in about 20 years, and you only have 1 tailed beast. See, this is the miscalculation that Redo made. By rejecting Hashirama's offer for a tailed beast, he didn't do a lot of math. Sure, of course, Hashirama was only going to keep 1 tailed beast for himself. But the miscalculation that Redo made was assuming that Hashirama wouldn't keep the strongest one. And of course, Hashirama and Tobirama knew which one was the strongest one because they A, sorted them into strength, and B, Hashirama fought them all. So the hidden cloud ended up with 2, the hidden stone ended up with 2, the hidden mist ended up with 2. And yet, the hidden sand only had 1. On top of that, your strongest shinobi is aging. Granny Chiu is in her 50s. But hey, at least you have Sasori, you know, that guy who just got trained by Granny Chiu. He's your next generation, right? I mean, he is a child genius, so capable of creating new and inventive puppets. There's no way he's not going to outshine Granny Chiu one day. And for a while, this was absolutely the case. Sasori is most likely the strongest puppet master of all time. In fact, he's so powerful that his defensive campaign in the Third Great Shinobi World War earned him the nickname of Sasori of the Red Sand because he dyed the sand red with the enemy's blood. He was able to make puppets so lifelike and so powerful that they seemed like they were humans, and he could control 100 of these humans at one time. He was the perfect embodiment of what Shimon wanted. One man who could act as 100. You know those super lifelike puppets? Yeah, that's because they were once humans. Sasori went so far as to make one of his best friends who died in a battle into a puppet. And then when Sasori wanted a stronger puppet, arguably the strongest puppet, he kidnapped the 3rd Kazekage. Well, I should say he killed the 3rd Kazekage and then he took his body. But Sasori was so talented as a puppeteer, he was able to give this puppet the Iron Sand ability, a feat which is not talked about enough. But then of course, you know, he abandons the village. So now the prodigy, the grandchild of the strongest shinobi you had for generations, has not only killed the 3rd Kazekage, but they've left. Not to mention that in the Third Great Shinobi World's War, you were fighting an entirely defensive battle against the Hidden Stone. And while you didn't necessarily lose anything because you had Sasori fighting for you, you didn't gain anything. Well, I guess you didn't lose land, but you did lose one very important thing: people. Again, for the 3rd war in a row. For 3 wars now, you have no spoils of war. You have just lost shinobi. And I don't know if you remember what I said earlier, but in order to send your shinobi out on shinobi missions for smaller villages, you need strong shinobi and a lot of them. Because of this shortage of manpower, the Hidden Sand services got a bit more expensive, and that's not good. In fact, their services got so much more expensive that the Land of Wind Daimyo actually started outsourcing shinobi work to Konoha. You see, Konoha has a 5 in population according to the data book, meaning their population is over double that of the Hidden Sand. So even if the Hidden Sand shinobi were just as strong as those from Konoha, it would still be significantly cheaper to get them from Konoha. On top of that, Konoha is not that far from the Hidden Sand, so economically it just made sense. This is a massive problem. For generations, the Hidden Sand has been focusing on harnessing the power of its shinobi in order to get these missions. And now, being on the losing side of 3 straight wars, they no longer have access to these missions. They have no trade, no agriculture, and no missions, effectively just creating a situation where they all just die in the desert. Fortunately, the 4th Kazekage, Rasa, Gaara's father, had a somewhat solution to this. You see, Rasa, just like the 3rd Kazekage, whose name we do not know, had magnet release. It's just something they can pass along now because they figured it out from Shukaku. But Rasa couldn't control Iron Sand. No, Rasa can control Gold Sand, which is not as powerful as Iron Sand. It's more malleable, less plentiful, and I think less heavy. It is, however, very good for sealing Shukaku because gold is heavier than sand. Gold dust is also good for another thing: filling your empty coffers. Rasa started to collect gold dust and sell it to other villages to make up for the economic losses of everything else. But the village quickly started to realize that we couldn't rely on each other. Essentially, the nomadic and individualistic ways of those who were brought to the Hidden Sand by Redo decades ago started to resurface. People realized that the village wasn't providing for me. So people started to realize it's better to focus on an individual strength as opposed to teamwork or a collaborative effort. And nobody believed this more than Rasa. See, Rasa wanted his family to be the strongest. Rasa knew that in a society built out of people only looking to better themselves, that those who were the strongest would rise to the top. So Rasa decided to seal Shukaku in his youngest son. See, neither Kankuro or Tamari had the affinity for it, but Rasa realized that Gaara did. So from the very second that Gaara was conceived, Rasa started to make him into the ultimate weapon in his mind. Think about it. Instead of focusing on something like a puppet brigade, Rasa was more worried about making one ultimate weapon. One person who could keep everybody away from the village or push an offensive campaign forward. Because for decades, focusing on a collaborative effort hadn't worked. And if they were being real with themselves, for decades, they had been carried by one person. It was Monzaemon Chikamatsu, and then it was Chiyo, and then it was Sasori. Rasa realized that success had come through this lineage and decided to continue it himself. But there was no promising puppeteers, at least on Sasori's level. So a Jinchuriki was their only hope. The only problem is that Shukaku had been treated poorly by the Hidden Sand the entire time they had known each other. So Shukaku terrorized Gaara. He wouldn't let Gaara sleep, and if Gaara did fall asleep, he would take over Gaara's body and start terrorizing the Hidden Sand. And this made sense for Shukaku. He had been sealed inside of a kettle for decades. And as time marched on, Rasa started to realize that Gaara would never get Shukaku under control. So Rasa, determined to cut his losses, ordered many assassinations on Gaara, all of which Gaara avoided. And all of these assassinations actually taught Gaara how to control Shukaku, which apparently won Daddy's love because Rasa started calling off the assassinations. And boom, finally, an ultimate weapon that is loyal to the Hidden Sand. Now it doesn't matter if we can't plant plants or ship goods. We have somebody who we can use to take other people's stuff. And 12 years later, they were finally presented with an opportunity to do just that. You see, Orochimaru approached the Hidden Sand, and specifically Rasa, and was essentially like,
Yo, we should take over Konoha.
you guys have been trying to take over Konoha literally since it was formed. So if you help me take over Konoha, I'll give you some land, and then boom, you don't even have to focus on using Gaara so heavily. And so they send Gaara to the tuning exams to basically destroy Konoha from the inside out, and things are looking like really good. You know, until Orochimaru kills Rasa so that he can impersonate him to get close to Hiruzen, to kill Hiruzen. 4 for 4. So now the Hidden Sand has launched an offensive campaign against the strongest village on Earth and sent their perfect weapon to this village, and the perfect weapon lost. And we've also lost our 4th Kazekage to an assassin's blade, and we quite literally have nobody to fill Rasa's role. Not to mention the literal thousands of Hidden Sand shinobi who died in the Konoha Crush arc. I think Might Guy and Kakashi alone are responsible for killing like close to 100 of them. So once again, on the losing side of a war effort, they kind of have to return to the Hidden Sand with their tails between their legs. Fortunately, they can play the card that their Kazekage had been assassinated and that they were misled into this Konoha Crush. Even though it's not really true because Ross is not assassinated until much later on in the arc. Like, they still very much agreed to invade Konoha. It was always really weird to me that they just let them get away with that. But how much worse could things get, right? I mean, we're not gonna put a 13-year-old in charge or anything. Oh, they did that, didn't they? Obviously, Gaara got talk no jutsu'd into being a good guy and was actually able to turn the Hidden Sand village around a little bit. Gaara started to reverse the ideology of the Hidden Sand. Essentially, he emphasized focused on growing together instead of individual, and he used this ideology to improve the strength of the Hidden Sand a little bit. But then, you know, 2.5 years after the Konoha Crush arc, he gets abducted by Deidara and then he gets killed. And obviously he comes back and he leads the allied shinobi forces and all of that, and it's super duper cute. But all of the problems of the Hidden Sand still persist even though Gaara is the Kazekage. Even now in Boruto, they don't have a thriving economic system. They haven't found a way to establish agricultural practices. They still only have one tailed beast, and actually at the current moment, that tailed beast lives with Naruto. At the end of the Mitsuki retrieval arc, they actually send Shukaku out of the Hidden Sand to live in Konoha, which means that the Hidden Sand has effectively 0 tailed beasts, especially when you subscribe to the theory that the one-tailed Shukaku is gonna go into Himawari. At least I hope, man. Please just give her something. Truly the only silver lining for the Hidden Sand is their upcoming crop of shinobi, specifically Shinki. Gaara adopted a child who had magnet release, specifically the magnet release of the third Kazekage. Shinki is able to control iron sand and is the clear-cut winner for next Kazekage. But that doesn't really mean anything. The Hidden Cloud has made cannons that can shoot the moon. We learned that in Naruto the Last, that the Hidden Cloud has focused on weapons research in the time of peace in order to make massive chakra cannons. Konoha has become the tech capital of the world. The Hidden Mist is now a popular tourist destination and just all around nice place to be. Inoki did incredible scientific research in the Hidden Stone that allowed him to essentially recreate himself, and that self can use particle release better than he ever could. But what has the Hidden Sand accomplished in this next generation? There's a train that runs from the Hidden Sand to Konoha now that was built by the Thunder Rail Company, which belongs to Konoha. I think the Hidden Sand tells an interesting story, a story that lies at the base of basically all Naruto stories. The Hidden Sand tells the story that the subject of your birth can very much decide who you become in your life, but only if you let it. If Redo accepted Hashirama's deal for peace and took one of the tailed beasts, maybe the First Shinobi World War wouldn't have happened. Maybe Redo wouldn't have been assassinated. Maybe they could have used those two-tailed beasts to launch a more effective battle against Konoha or the Hidden Stone. Maybe in that era of peace, they could have focused on agricultural advances or establishing technological dominance. Hell, you had the scientific prowess to backwards engineer a Kekkei Genkai that you could then apply to some of the strongest people in your village. You made a puppeteer brigade. Why didn't you make a magnet release brigade? The story of the Hidden Sand tells a story of dissension and distrust. How individualistic natures will never get you far, and that ultimately you need to rely on those around you if you ever want to establish true might and true glory in this world. An army of one is just an outing. And while we've seen one-man armies in Naruto, like Minato, these are people who in their final moments have needed those around them in order to achieve what they need in their life most. Minato died with his wife's arms around his waist as she helped him seal the thing that was going to destroy their village together. The third Raikage fought off 10,000 men for 3 days straight, so his army could make it back to their village. Collaboration and cooperation is one of the most important themes throughout all of Naruto. And maybe the denial of this cooperation and collaboration, and instead focusing on individualistic desires, is the curse that plagued the Kazekage. So the Hidden Cloud. It might feel like a stretch to say that it is as strong or even stronger than Konoha. That's because the average person doesn't know a lot of the exploits of the Hidden Cloud. In my Why Konoha is the Strongest Village in Naruto video, we talked about some of the geographical, political, and other reasons that would have built Konoha as the strongest village. And while we may not have as much information on the Hidden Cloud as we do for Konoha, there is a good amount. But before we get into like canonical knowledge from the Naruto verse, we should talk about the things that we can understand without actually being told. Kind of like how we did with Konoha. Let's talk about geographical location. And I'm not going to be talking about the soil this time because I had a bunch of well actuallys when I said there was good soil in rainforests. Didn't know I had a large following in the agrolysis community, but apparently I do. But what I will talk about is the Land of Lightning's location. You see, the Land of Lightning has by far and away the most coastline out of any country in the world, at least the world map that we get. Most Naruto maps are a square, and we can't see the back ends of the Land of Wind or the Land of Stone, so we don't really know what's beyond those certain points. So if you use these square maps, the Land of Lightning has the most coast. But even hypothetically, if the Land of Wind and the Land of Earth are rounded out to have a bunch of coastline, it wouldn't matter because the Land of Lightning's coastline is the most useful. You see, the Land of Lightning has coastline that faces the Land of Earth, the Land of Water, the Land of Fire, and I guess technically the Land of Wind if you go past the Land of Fire. This is obviously incredibly important for things like trade and defensibility. See, you would assume something that's a peninsula would be very easy to attack. But how many boat battles have we seen in Naruto? Hell, I don't think we technically saw a boat until Boruto. So by being surrounded by mostly water, that actually helps in terms of defensibility in the Naruto world. There's no navies. I mean, there might be, but we haven't seen them. And since we're talking about defensibility, let's also talk about the geography of the Land of Lightning. We haven't seen a whole lot of images of the Land of Lightning, but basically everything we have seen is mountains, and very steep ones. In fact, in both Naruto, Shinobi Strikers, and all of the other Naruto games, the village hidden in the clouds is usually built atop very steep mountains. And as these mountains jet out of the water or out of the ground, but it's usually out of the water, there are buildings built around the top of these mountains with bridges running to each other. This implies two things: that A, the village hidden in the clouds is very technologically advanced and always has been. It is incredibly hard to build on top of a mountain, especially when you're building at cloud level, because let's remember what this village is called: the village hidden in the clouds. And every time we've seen the village, everything is in the clouds. So these buildings, aka the entirety of the village hidden in the clouds, is built thousands of feet above sea level. And the second thing that it implies is this would be damn near impossible to attack as an opposing force. One, we addressed the no boats thing, but two, how are you supposed to mobilize an entire force to attack a city on top of a mountain, especially when you can only come from one way? That one way being the southwestern tip of the Land of Lightning. So now the people defending the village in the clouds have a geographic advantage in both height and, I guess, water. There is also the fact that the Land of Lightning is further than every other country is from any other country. What do I mean by that? None of the major nations touch. There is small nations between every single one of them. But in the cases of the Land of Fire, the Land of Earth, and the Land of Wind, there is only one small nation between each of them, that is. The closest village to the Land of Lightning, aka the Land of Fire, aka Konoha, has 3 small countries between the two of them. The Land of Water has an ocean between them in the Land of Lightning. And the second closest land, the Land of Earth, has 5 small countries between them in the Land of Lightning. Meaning that in order to mobilize an offensive force against the Land of Lightning, you have to march through what is going to be a couple of very angry small nations. And considering that the Second Shinobi World War was all about people walking through the Land of Rain and the Land of Rain getting really upset about that in fighting back, this is not a good idea. I mean, sure, one of the countries that Konoha has to pass through is the Land of Hot Water, where Hidan is from. And they're a bit like Switzerland. They don't get involved in any military affairs. But hey, Hidan might still be there. And I know what you're thinking,
Well, if it's only mountains and oceans, how do you sustain an economy there?
and I'll counter that point with, what did Pacific Islanders do for thousands of years? Oh, I don't know. Thrive until white men found out they wanted pineapples. And their thriving economy is actually canon. You see, in the last data book, every village is ranked in 3 things: population, economy, and military. All of these things are ranked on a 1 to 5 scale. Konoha, for example, has a 5 out of 5 population. Konoha is by far and away the biggest village. For military forces, Konoha is ranked a 3 out of 5, and for economy, they're ranked a 2 out of a 5, leading to a total of 10 of 15 possible points. You see, the Hidden Cloud only has a 3 out of 5 in population. They don't live in fields like Konoha. It's much harder to populate on top of a mountain. But their military is ranked a 4 out of 5, a whole point higher than Konoha, which should be enough evidence right there that they are a stronger village. But their economy is ranked a 5 out of 5, 3 whole points higher than Konoha, giving them a total of 12 out of 15 possible points, which, by the way, is the highest out of any ninja village. As to why their village is thriving, there's a couple of reasons. We've already touched on one of them, the fact that they are very technologically advanced. But also in the shinobi world, having military might is having economic might. Smaller countries will hire shinobi for jobs, and that money gets put back into the village. And then considering the fact that they have a ton of coastline, they are probably a shipping and trading center of the ninja world, on top of the fact that they probably have a thriving seafood market. But what's truly important is their military might. Outside of the Hokage, the Raikage are the strongest people on Earth, and you could even argue that many of the Raikage rivaled the strength of the Hokage. And this is evidenced by the histories of the Great Shinobi World Wars that both Konoha and the Hidden Cloud participated in. Specifically, the First and the Third Great Shinobi World Wars. Let's go chronologically here. In the First Great Shinobi World War, Tobirama was essentially forced into signing an armistice against the Hidden Cloud. Essentially, Tobirama identified that if Konoha signed an armistice with the Hidden Cloud, the rest of the battles around their borders would come to an end. Because I'll do a brief review on what the First Great Shinobi World War was about, but if you want a deeper look, I've covered it in its entirety right here. But essentially, as these nations came to fruition, there was disputes about where people's borders should be, and this caused smaller skirmishes. Hashirama handed out all of the tailed beasts, hoping that that would quell some of the anger, but it didn't. So essentially, essentially, Konoha had to fight every single other village. But at the same time, every other village was fighting. It was the most complete out of all of the Great Shinobi World Wars, in that everybody was involved. But it was still clear that Konoha and the Hidden Cloud were the strongest, so if they formed an allegiance, the war would come to an end. Konoha was essentially forced into making this decision because they had already lost Hashirama and they couldn't defend their border from all sides. But when Tobirama went to go meet with the second Raikage, whose name we do not know. Oh wait, I'm kidding, it's A, just like every other Raikage. Raikages 1 through 4, all named the letter A. He was attacked by the Gold and Silver Brothers. Now, one of these days, I'm gonna do a much deeper dive on the Gold and Silver Brothers and a couple of theories about them, but for the moment, let me basically brush over what they are or who they are. They are direct descendants of Hagoromo. You could say, yeah, so is everyone, but for some reason, their bloodline was stronger. And one day, they were out adventuring and they got eaten by Kurama. They spent 2 weeks inside of Kurama, gnawing on his intestinal tract, and eventually he got so sick of them being in there, he threw them up. And because they had eaten so much of Kurama's flesh, they got Kurama's chakra, and they were both essentially Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. The first Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, mind you, because they were numbing on Kurama before he got sealed in Mito. The Gold and Silver Brothers were therefore very powerful, and also very war-hungry, so they didn't want Tobirama and A, the second Raikage, to sign this peace treaty. And when they attacked him, they almost killed him. But don't worry, they're gonna get another shot. Breaking up a peace treaty essentially got them kicked out of the Hidden Cloud. But we don't know if it got them kicked out of the Hidden Cloud or kicked out of the Hidden Cloud, because later in that very same war, the Gold and Silver Brothers would be leading a platoon that would catch Tobirama and his platoon of ninjas that included Shisui's grandfather, Hiruzen, and Danzo doing spy work in the Hidden Cloud. Tobirama identified that his platoon wasn't gonna be able to make it back to Konoha before the Gold and Silver Brothers caught up with them. So he hung back and acted as a diversion. That's how powerful the Gold and Silver Brothers were, that they had Tobirama, Hiruzen, Danzo, and Shisui's grandfather, who also maybe had the Kodowa Matsukame, and they didn't stand and fight. And then Kinkaku and Ginkaku, the Gold and Silver Brothers, killed Tobirama, the 5th strongest person to come out of Konoha. Naruto, Sasuke, Hashirama, Madara, oh shit, Minato, and then Tobirama 6th. Do y'all think Obito would lose in a fight to Tobirama? This is for another video. Regardless, Tobirama is killed by Kinkaku and Ginkaku, which makes a lot of sense because as Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, they have an insane amount of chakra. There's also the fact that they are descendants of Hagoromo directly, which means they had an insane amount of chakra. And it's a good thing they have that insane amount of chakra because they also have Hagoromo's 6-path tools. Essentially, Hagoromo had 6 weapons he really liked, and they require an insane amount of chakra to wield. And the whole purpose of a lot of these tools is essentially to pull your soul out of your body, slice it, and then throw it in a gourd where you get to live forever. Think of it a bit like Itachi's Totsuka blade with more steps. So in a sense, the Land of Lightning won the first Great Shinobi World War. I mean, every other village lost almost 2 Kage, while they only lost 1, maybe. See, we don't know if the first Raikage died in the first Great Shinobi World War or if he died in the lead up to it. All we know is the second Raikage was in charge during that time. But we know for a fact that Konoha lost 2 Kage, Hashirama and Tobirama, arguably some of their strongest. And then a lot of things happen, like the Second Great Shinobi World War, which the Land of Lightning sits out of. Because believe it or not, if the mainland is all attacking each other, they can chill because they're really far from it. So while everyone was kind of invading the village hidden in the rain and kind of losing to Hanzo, they were just like, we'll let you guys destroy your areas. And therefore, over the course of a 10-year-long war where the entirety of the mainland was devastated, Land of Lightning just prospered economically and built up their military might. So they were ready to give everyone the smoke in the Third Great Shinobi World War. Before we get into that, we should talk about how they built up their military might. You see, when Hashirama had handed out all the tailed beasts like they were free candy on Halloween, the Hidden Cloud apparently put a bid on Matatabi the 2 tails and Gyuki the 8 tails. Now, say what you will, we're not entirely sure whether or not tailed beast strength correlates to tail number. We just know that Kurama is stronger than all the other tailed beasts combined. Gyuki is arguably the second strongest tailed beast, being able to shove a tailed beast bomb coming from the 10 tails back into its mouth using a tailed beast bomb of its own. And Matatabi is fast and cool looking. And the Jinchuriki died to Hidan, the weakest member of the Akatsuki. Like how does he cut you? With the Jin Cloak, he literally, all he has is a sword. He can't use ninjutsu, just Jin Cloak and tear him in half. I don't get how you as a Jinchuriki lose to Hidan.
Oh, Kakuzo was there too, and she didn't have complete control over Matatabi. She couldn't do a perfect Jin cloak.
Which is weird considering the fact that Killer Bee could, and he took Naruto, who's not from the Hidden Cloud, to the place where he learned to do it. Like her, I don't even remember her name. Her ability was spitting flaming furballs. Flaming, I swear to God, Kishimoto could not write a powerful woman if Nobara punched him in the face. What were we talking about? Anyways, the Hidden Cloud has 2 Jinchuriki, not 1, like Konoha. And those Jinchuriki can manifest their tailed beast to a certain degree, something that we haven't seen out of any Jinchuriki from Konoha until Naruto. But that doesn't mean that the Hidden Cloud always had a control over their tailed beasts. In fact, that was a really big issue. You see, Blue Bee, the Jinchuriki of Gyuki before Killer Bee, had a real issue getting a handle on Gyuki. You see, in the manga, it just kind of implied that Gyuki's really hard to beat the Jinchuriki of because he's wily. But in the anime, we get a filler arc where Orochimaru's giving Blue Bee kind of crazy pills to make Gyuki rage out of Blue Bee and destroy the Hidden Cloud, and also just to get some like cool science evidence. But the reason Gyuki is rampaging around the Hidden Cloud doesn't necessarily matter. We just gotta talk about what happened when he did. See, the 3rd Raikage created a force of people that included his son, the 4th Raikage, that would fight Gyuki every time he rampaged. Yeah, they would just beat Gyuki up until he was tired, and then he would go back into Blue Bee. That is a tailed beast, specifically the 2nd strongest one. And they don't have anybody with sealing jutsus, they were just using their hands. You see, taming a tailed beast is a lot easier when you have adamantite chains or Reaper Death Seal. Fuin Jutsu is not the way of the Hidden Cloud, it's Fist no Jutsu. But then there was one time that Blue Bee went on a rampage, but the 3rd Raikage, didn't have his team with him. So fought Gyuki to a standstill. Essentially, they both knocked each other out. Hashirama is the only other person who's ever 1v1'd a tailed beast, and he has a hard counter to tailed beasts. Wajutsu literally saps their chakra away from them. The 3rd Raikage had none of that. He literally just out-muscled a tailed beast. And those are the kind of feats we should expect from the 3rd Raikage, because the next event we're talking about is the 3rd Great Shinobi World War, where we know for a fact that the Hidden Cloud was involved because Minato comes into a battle against and Killer Bee. Essentially, while out on a mission, Minato bumps into a group of ninja from the Hidden Cloud that involves the 4th Raikage and Killer Bee. Now, this is Minato we're talking about, 3rd Great Ninja War Minato, who fought off 1,000 Iwa shinobi to end the war by himself. This is the fastest man on Earth. But here's the thing, he's fighting the 2nd and the 3rd fastest men on Earth. And this battle, like many other battles we're going to talk about today, ends in a standstill. Minato has a kunai to Killer Bee's neck. Killer Bee has a sword to Minato's heart. And both of those people are still alive in Boruto, unlike Minato. Arguably weaker now, obviously, but still alive. And since we're talking about the 3rd Great Shinobi World War, let's talk about the 3rd Raikage's role in it. The Land of Lightning launched an offensive. We don't know against who, but based off location, we can guess it was either the Land of Earth or the Land of Fire. Essentially, the offensive fell through, and the Land of Lightning had to retreat back to the Land of Lightning. But just like with Tobirama in the first war, they weren't gonna make it back. So the 3rd Raikage decided to stay back and fight off the forces that were pushing them back. A force of 10,000 shinobi. He fought for 3 days against 10,000 shinobi. And the only reason he died is because he ran out of chakra. 72 hours. They couldn't touch him. And this is because he had a lightning cloak that was impenetrable, earning him the nickname the Perfect Shield. The Perfect Shield that shielded his comrades as they retreated to the Land of Lightning. And after his death, his son, who was very capable, became the next Raikage. And after the death of Minato, he became the fastest person on Earth, using his lightning cloak to A, improve his defenses just like his father, but B, massively improve his speed, being able to hang with Naruto in Jin Cloak. So now we're caught up to modern times in Naruto. But there's something else that makes the Hidden Cloud special. Every single village in Naruto has experienced a coup or has been destroyed or attacked by missing ninja from said village. The Hidden Stone was attacked by Deidara. The Hidden Sand was attacked by Sasori, who killed the 3rd Kazekage and made him into a puppet. Konoha, destroyed by Pain and Orochimaru. And the Hidden Mist experienced a coup headed up by Zabuza and Kisame. Not one member of the Akatsuki is from the Hidden Cloud. I can't tell you why this is, other than the fact that maybe nationalism just runs deeper in the Hidden Cloud than it does anywhere else. Or maybe they're so prosperous and powerful there's no reason to defect. Whatever the reason is, the Hidden Cloud has been politically very stable its entire existence. But there's also the possibility that ninjas who would have defected just liked the mischievous nature of the Hidden Cloud. Because if we're being real, outside of the Blood Mist Village, the Hidden Cloud is the most morally gray. I would say amongst external affairs, that being non-domestic affairs, that the Hidden Cloud is the most mischievous. I mean, obviously we have things like the time the Gold and Silver brothers jumped Tobirama during a peace treaty. But after the end of the First Great Shinobi World War, when all of the ninja villages agreed to cut back on their military spending, the Hidden Cloud didn't do that. Essentially, the Hidden Cloud saw this as an opportunity to build up their military might while everybody else was de-escalating. They essentially never wanted another village to have a leg up on them, a behavior that the third Tsuchikage said was the reason that other villages never really reached for a time of peace. Because if one person's building up a military while everyone else is building down their military, it's gonna set a little unrest. And this isn't where the mischievousness ends. A couple of years before the Third Great Shinobi World War, the village hidden in the clouds tried to kidnap Kushina. You see, at the time, Kushina was the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, and the Hidden Cloud wanted to capture her and research her unique chakra. This plan is foiled by Minato, and that's how Kushina and Minato have their meet cute. In a time of peace, they were trying to kidnap other villages' Jinchuriki. They were doing what the Akatsuki wanted to before the Akatsuki even made it cool. And then after the Third Great Shinobi World War, when people from the Hidden Cloud were sent to Konoha to sign a peace treaty, they tried to kidnap Hinata in order to research the Byakugan. Essentially, the whole peace treaty party was a facade in order to capture one of the Hyuga. This was foiled by Hayashi, and it was the reason that Heizashi, Hayashi's brother, had to kill himself, because the Hidden Cloud denied they had done anything wrong, and this might have restarted the Third Great Shinobi World War. So they demanded the death and the body of the person who had killed this head of ninjas that was sent with the Hidden Cloud envoy. Essentially, they were hoping to get the Byakugan. So the problem was that if Hayashi, who was part of the main family, went, they would get his Byakugan. But Heizashi, his identical twin, took his place because upon his death, his curse mark would activate and seal his Byakugan away forever. Oh, I'm sorry. Earlier, I said it was after the First Great Shinobi World War that everybody was de-escalating their military might, but the Land of Lightning continued to escalate. It was actually after the Fourth Great Ninja War. So like right now in Boruto, essentially. This is why in Naruto the only canon Naruto movie, we get the Hidden Cloud takes control of the make sure the moon doesn't hit the earth task, because they've been building giant chakra cannons that can blow anything out of the sky. When you see a man pull 2 moons down to earth and you can only stop one of them, you want a game plan for that later on. But once again, that speaks to their strength. They have giant chakra cannons capable of possibly destroying the moon. And here's the thing, everybody likes to rag on the current group of Kage because they're not as strong as previous groups, and that's absolutely correct. Darui is actually very powerful. He's on par with the 7 Swordsmen of the Mist in Kenjutsu, and he knows Black Lightning, a jutsu created by the Third Raikage and passed only onto Darui. Black Lightning is essentially an extension of Darui's will. A bit like how Goku can bend his Kamehameha wave, Darui can form his lightning to match his will. He can create a Black Panther out of it that he can control. It is very powerful. And then there's the 4th Raikage's assistant, whose name I have to look up, Mabui, who is one of the baddest women in this show. Mabui has an ability called Heavenly Transfer Technique that I believe is critically underspoken about. Heavenly Transfer Technique allows Mabui to transfer anything or anybody anywhere on Earth instantaneously. It's Flying Raijin, but you can use it on objects.
You can use Flying Raijin on objects.
This is better. With Flying Raijin, you can Flying Raijin somebody to one location and yourself to another. You can even, in Minato's case, Flying Raijin tailed beast bombs away. But with Heavenly Transfer Technique, you can transfer massive amounts of things anywhere on Earth, not just where you have a seal. You can just say, I want it in Antarctica, and it's there. The only downside is that if you get transferred with Heavenly Transfer Technique, it's a bit rough on your body. You don't enter a dimensional dimensional rift like you do with flying Raijin. You just get beamed there at the speed of light. So the only people that can really stand this is Tsunade using her strength of 100 seal, or the Raikage with the lightning clothes, or anybody of that caliber. But those are the only people that you would want to send anywhere, for being real. Also, the damage is kind of helpful because if you send somebody somewhere who you don't like, they'll get damaged on the way. So the current generation that's inhabiting the Hidden Cloud is very strong. As strong, if not stronger, than Konoha. Obviously, Naruto and Sasuke are ridiculously powerful, and so is Sakura. But on a median level of your average ninja, the Hidden Cloud is probably more powerful, and that's backed up with literal stats from the stat book. But what do I know? I have no real horse in this race. I don't believe the Hidden Cloud or Konoha is uniquely stronger than each other in a myriad of different ways. I think both are strong in their own respective ways. Konoha has more become the center for scientific advancement, while the Hidden Cloud has become more the center for just military might. So how did Konoha become the biggest kid in class? Let's start this video in the only way that really makes sense, at the beginning. And I know what most of you are thinking.
Well, of course Konoha is the biggest kid in class. They had both the Senju and the Uchiha.
But what if I told you Konoha's strength began way before the Senju and the Uchiha decided to shake hands? What if I told you Konoha's strength was always fated because of its location? In the Naruto worlds, we are aware of one continent. This is the continent where the land of fire, the land of sound, the land of wind, the land of rock all exist. And on this one continent, the land of fire is directly in the middle. Equatorial, some might say. And I know what you're thinking, being in the middle doesn't necessarily make it a good place to be. Look at Nebraska. But in a world where this is the only continent, being equatorial means a lot of things for you. Equatorial meaning that your country lays along the equator of the Earth. Countries that lay along the Earth's equator are usually warm and tropical, and therefore see dense growths of greenery and life, which is very consistent with what we see in Konoha. In fact, every bit of Konoha seems to be incredibly covered in trees, almost like it's a rainforest. I mean, Konoha literally means village hidden in the leaves, and the country is literally called the land of fire, implying warmth and heat. So agriculturally, the land of fire is very advantageous. It would have rich soil and be very good for farming. On top of that, its dense woods would provide cover for animals or humans. And even though the land of fire is central, it also has a lot of coast, specifically a coast that faces towards the Hidden Mist Village and a coast that faces towards the Hidden Sand Village. And I know what you're saying.
Well, Konoha does have significantly less coast than all the other countries.
But remember, there's only been confirmed life on this one continent. So having a coast that points in the direction of where there is no living beings means nothing. So by having waterways that face towards other countries you can trade with is also very advantageous politically and economically. So we take into account the fact that Konoha arguably has the least harsh weather, the land of mist being covered in mist, the land of clouds being high up and mountainous, the land of stone being basically stone and therefore impossible to plant crops and food on, and then the land of wind literally being a desert. Konoha is a green belt of incredible agricultural promise. So to assume that a lot of people would try to settle there is not ridiculous. And to assume that the strong would rise to the top of that crop and monopolize that area, which is very advantageous for easy living, is also not that ridiculous. Just how we got the Uchiha and the Senju. Resources are not infinite in the Naruto world. This is actually why the first and second Great Shinobi World Wars occurred. And resources also played a large factor in the third Great Shinobi World War. So in this green belt, I guess, of the land of fire, the strong would rise to the top. And the strong would only get stronger because of promises in agriculture and the ease of living. People in the Hidden Sand cannot focus on getting stronger as a ninja if they're hungry and thirsty. But enough about fictional geography, let's talk about the Uchiha and the Senju. Obviously, in the Warring States period, they were warring factions, but they weren't necessarily always fighting each other just to fight each other. Essentially, it was well known that they were the two strongest clans. So if a village wanted to take over another village, they would hire either the Uchiha or the Senju to help them take over that other village. But if the village that was about to be invaded caught word that the village that was about to invade them hired the Senju, they would hire the Uchiha. And therefore, the Uchiha and the Senju fought proxy wars for generations. But fighting these proxy wars made both the Uchiha and the Senju significantly stronger. Obviously, yes, it also killed a lot of their children and resulted in their clans not being as large as they could be, but it sharpened the respective blades of both the Senju and the Uchiha. For reference, the Warring States period was 1500 years at least. So that's a lot of time to perfect your craft of killing each other. And then one day, these two clans decide to come together. Now, the two clans who are considered the strongest clans on Earth, who have spent thousands of years sharpening their blades against each each other have become one unified force. The threat of the existence of this unified force is so significant, it causes the other countries to create hidden villages of their own. See, Konoha didn't inspire other countries to make their own villages, it scared them into it. But just because the hands were shooken between the Uchiha and the Senju doesn't mean that the skirmishes were over. Madara wanted to be the Hokage, but Tobirama said that it should be brought up to a democratic vote amongst Konoha members, and the democratic process elected Hashirama. Now this isn't great, but Hashirama essentially goes, well, Madara, you can be my shadow Hokage, and sends Madara to deal with the other countries. But this isn't the first time that the Senju and the Uchiha had a different approach to something, and it definitely wouldn't be the last. Most specifically, I'm talking about the Uchiha's want to stay within their own clan. What do I mean by that? Even after the formation of Konoha, the Uchihas decided to stay as a whole, as a clan. They didn't invite others to breed into their clan. There was no half Uchiha babies running around. In order to keep the strength of their clan pure, they continued to breed within themselves, making them almost a sovereign state inside of Konoha. One that would willingly participate in wars and back up Konoha in any matter, but still its own isolated cell. While the Senju did something that is incredibly important for the strengthening of Konoha. The Senju decided to cast their name to the side. They were no longer the Senju clan. They were a clan that lived in Konoha. So the Senju decided to marry outside of their clan, and they were led by their literal leader, Hashirama. See, Hashirama, though it was for political reasons, married an Uzumaki, and this set the precedent for all other Senju members, that they should marry outside of their clan in order to strengthen Konoha as a whole. This is why you don't see the Senjus running around Konoha like you used to see the Uchihas. It's not that they were wiped out or kicked out of Konoha, they've just taken other names. But that doesn't change the blood that's running through the veins of Konoha. Now, not only do you have an isolated sect of the Uchihas that still count towards your military force, but you also have the other strongest clan on Earth increasing the strength of the entire village by marrying outside of their clan. And then when Madara gets fed up with being in the village and tries to rally the Uchihas against the village, the Uchihas kick him out, stopping the village from breaking in half and losing half of its fighting force. And it's at this point that we start to have the build up towards the First Great Shinobi World War. Hashirama and Tobirama are able to kill Madara. That's all done. But Madara brings an idea to Hashirama during their battle, catching all of the tailed beasts, something Madara was able to do in order to fight Hashirama. So seeing the build up to the First Great Shinobi World War and no longer wanting war, Hashirama goes out and catches all of the tailed beasts, except for Shukaku, who the Wind Country had already caught. Land of Wind. Hashirama then calls the other Kages of all the other hidden villages. And here's the thing. The only reason this worked is because it was Konoha calling the conference. There had been skirmishes along the borders for years, but Konoha was the man with the big stick. And a large part of the reason they had the big stick was the fact that Madara went around to each village, specifically the village hidden in the stone, and told them they needed to be subservient to Konoha. And then he would proceed to kick the shit out of whoever was in charge there, like he did to Inoki and Mu. And it's at this meeting that Hashirama sells 7 of the tailed beasts to the other countries. Well, technically he wanted to give them away. Tobirama is the only reason he sold them. And while this wouldn't stop the war from happening, it essentially funded Konoha to make it through it. Wars are incredibly expensive. In fact, the armistice that was signed at the end of the First Great Shinobi World War was signed because the countries were running out of resources. And the after-war realization that all of the countries were destroyed, had lost their Kages and all of their resources, put all of the countries into a depression after the First Great Shinobi World War, except for Konoha. Konoha had taken massive losses. They had lost both Hashirama and Tobirama in the war, but their war effort was essentially funded by the other villages, meaning that the economic disparity that they saw after the First Great Shinobi World War was significantly less than all the other hidden villages. That money could also be put towards repairing Konoha or setting up infrastructure or agriculture. And in fact, that money was used during the First Great Shinobi World War by Tobirama, who took the money of his brother's spoils and set up important systems in Konoha, specifically the Anbu, the police force, and the ninja school. He even went so far as to create the tuning exams. During a world war, Tobirama focused on infrastructure, specifically infrastructure that would keep Konoha whole with the police force and the Anbu, monitoring threats and keeping the status quo in a growing village, but he also focused on his war effort, creating the ninja school and the tuning exams to make sure that any ninja they put into the war front is A, old enough, and B, prepared. But Tobirama also focused on something else vitally important: research. Tobirama created the Shadow Clone, Flying Raijin, and Edo Tensei. And while he did all three of these things during the Warring States period, it set the precedent for scientific, well, I guess, ninjutsu research in Konoha. By focusing on academics and training the ninjas that they are creating in Konoha, it created a stronger class of ninja. I mean, think about how you pass through Ninja Academy. You have to create a shadow clone, a jutsu that hadn't existed until 10 years earlier when Tobirama created it. A jutsu that effectively doubles the fighting power of your village if every ninja on the front line knows how to do it. And this precedent for research would remain a key ingredient in Konoha's strength for many years down the line. Look at Tobirama's successor, Hiruzen, considered the professor. He was considered the professor because he learned every single jutsu and fighting technique of the leaf, except for Flying Raijin. But at the very highest level of shinobi, you had people actively searching for strength through the medium of identifying and figuring out multiple ninjutsus and fighting techniques. Look at the person Hiruzen adopted, Orochimaru, who had an endless quest to understand every single ninjutsu ever created, and therefore that drove him to figure out immortality. He rediscovered the jutsus of Tobirama and made them better. He figured out cloning, how to make Sharingans from scratch, how to graft new body parts onto existing people. Hell, he brought back wood release. While sometimes the research may not have been ethical, looking directly at you, Orochimaru, having research being done to actively enhance the ninjutsu of a village is massive for strength. Think of it a bit like weapons technology in our world. Having a plane that can fly and not be detected by sonar is significantly better than one that can be. But since we're talking about redefining battlefields, we have to talk about one of Orochimaru's partners, Tsunade. You see, Tsunade was a senju and therefore inherently was strong, a reality for a lot of people in Konoha at this current time who are nameless. But because of the economic disparity of the aftermath of the First Great Shinobi World War, we got the Second Great Shinobi World War. Now, who was fighting who is relatively hazy in this war. We just know that a lot of countries were in the Land of Rain. But the long line of academics who made their names by doing research into ninjutsu didn't stop with Hiruzen or Orochimaru. In fact, the Second Great Shinobi World War is where Tsunade made her name, for two reasons. One, with her almost omnipotent medical ninjutsu, she was able to counter the hundreds, if not thousands, of poisons that Granny Chiyo had created. You see, Granny Chiyo's whole thing was that she made a bunch of poisons that were all incurable and undetectable. Therefore, if her puppets even scraped you, you were dead because there was no cure. And that was kind of the Land of Wind's claim to fame. Granny Chiyo was the majority of their military force, but Tsunade was able to counter that, giving Konoha, the already stronger and economically more powerful country, a leg up. But on top of that, because of her exploits in the Second Great Shinobi World War, she was able to make it a reality that every single three-man shinobi team should have a medical ninja. And by enacting this rule and making it a reality for Konoha, Konoha saw a massive increase in survivability and mission success. Think about it. If one of your team members got injured before, there was nothing you could do for them, and then you were down to 2 people. But if you have a doctor who can also fight there, they can bring that person back onto the field, which is going to massively improve your success rate in battle. And to this day, this is not something that other villages have instilled. It's still weirdly enough specifically from Konoha. We haven't seen it from the Hidden Cloud, the Hidden Stone, the Hidden Wind, or the Hidden Water. So because of this and the vastness of the medical ninjas that Konoha has, they have better survivability and therefore larger military might than the other countries. And while their army may not technically be the largest because the Hidden Stone and Hidden Cloud are said to be larger, by keeping their strongest ninjas alive or just keeping many ninja alive, they're able to gain battle experience and also maintain the upper hand. Also, because their success rate on missions was higher because of the addition of a medical ninja, smaller countries were more likely to hire Konoha ninjas for missions. And since completing ninja missions is a large part of any hidden village's economy, this gave Konoha an economical leg up and allowed them to A, make their services cheaper, and B, guarantee that they're gonna get completed more often, which put villages like the Hidden Sand in a bind. See, during the Second and Third Great Shinobi World Wars, the Hidden Sand's entire objective was to increase their military might so that they would get hired for missions. This is more likely than not why puppeteering was made, and why the Hidden Sand was so vehement on creating military might, because they wanted to make their ninja mission hirings cheaper so they could undercut Konoha, but they were never able to accomplish this. So now you have a rich country getting richer that has access to favorable ports, can give you cheap ninja missions. None of their ninjas are dying. They have an agricultural advantage over the other countries, and slowly but surely Konoha began to increase the lead ahead of other villages, which is why the Third Great Shinobi World War happened. Essentially, when other villages began to thrive while others began to fail, the failing villages didn't like that very much. Specifically, the Hidden Stone, the Hidden Cloud, and the Hidden Mist. Take a look at a second at the political situation of the Third Great Shinobi World War. We know for a fact that the Hidden Stone and Konoha were warring. This is where the Battle of Kanami Bridge happens. Inoki sends a force of 1,000 shinobi to try and take over Konoha that Minato stops single-handedly. We know they're fighting. We also know that Konoha and the Hidden Cloud are fighting, because Minato comes up against A and Killer B. And we also know that the Hidden Mist and Konoha are fighting, because the Hidden Mist abduct Rin, put a Sobu in her, and try to send her back to Konoha to act as a Trojan horse. Essentially, the only village we don't know that's fighting Konoha is the Hidden Sand, but we know that Sasori gets the nickname Sasori of the Red Sand during this war, so the Hidden Sand were fighting somebody, probably the Hidden Stone, but we don't know. But we know for sure that at least 3 villages are attempting to attack Konoha from basically all sides, and Konoha individually beats every single one of these villages in order. However, military might isn't everything. Sometimes you have to be bureaucratic, and bureaucracy is something that is learned. You're not just born with the ability to lead diplomatically, which is where another one of Konoha's many advantages comes in. The fact that they had a Kage for longer than any other village outside of the Hidden Stone. In Hiruzen, obviously the Hidden Stone had a Noki for like 300 years. And so it was at the conclusion of the Third Great Shinobi World's War that Hiruzen realized that he needed to step down as Hokage to take the blame and the anger onto himself for the war. This was done mostly to soothe the Danzo, who wanted the Third Great Shinobi World War to continue until Konoha came out on top, which is arguably the way things were going. But by pulling out of the war at an appropriate time and putting an end to the bloodshed, Konoha was able to once again prosper economically. But since we're talking about Danzo, let's talk about Danzo. You may not agree with his approach. I know I don't. But Danzo's creation of the root is one of the reasons Konoha is as successful as it is. And here's the thing, Danzo creating the root isn't necessarily even that evil compared to some of the things other villages have done. Look at Kinkaku and Ginkaku attacking Tobirama during a peace summit. Hidden Cloud Jonin trying to abduct Hinata to restart the Third Great Shinobi World War. Inoki attempting to invade Konoha after an armistice had already been agreed upon. The Hidden Mist abducting a child to slap a tailed beast inside of her and have her destroy an entire village. When you look at all the various war crimes that have occurred over the duration of Naruto's history, the root starts to make a little bit of sense. The root begins to make even more sense when you look at how stable Konoha has been. Obviously Danzo, and therefore subsequently the root, were responsible for the Uchiha massacre. Not great, I'll admit that. But the Uchiha massacre is significantly less bloody and less detrimental to the health of Konoha than a war between the Uchiha and the rest of Konoha would have been. Also, we don't necessarily know whether or not the Uchiha would have won this. Therefore, from Danzo's point of view, which would have been on the side of the loser if the Uchiha had won, having the Uchiha all die is significantly better for the stability of Konoha. And this is just one of the many things Danzo did to keep Konoha stable and powerful. He also managed to turn Hanzo the Salamander against the Akatsuki. He managed to make Konoha come together as a whole by revealing that Naruto was the Jinchuriki to the Nine Tails and making him the center of everybody's hate, giving them something to rally around. None of these things are good things, and all of these things probably had better solutions. But Danzo's work in the shadows, and therefore subsequently the work of the root in the shadows, actually did a good job at keeping Konoha stable, while places like the Hidden Mist had a coup that Zabuza and Kisame were involved in. The Hidden Cloud had Kinkaku and Ginkaku, their 2 strongest shinobi, defect from the village and try to kill Tobirama. The Hidden Sands Hokage was killed by Sasori and turned into a puppet. I mean, I guess technically Orochimaru did kill Hiruzen, but Orochimaru also killed the Kase Kage. Honestly, the only village possibly more stable than Konoha is the Hidden Stone, and that's because of the wild amount of nationalism that they have for their village, and also the fact that they've they've had the same Kage for damn near 100 years. Like him or not, Danzo was doing what he believed was best for the leaf. And even though his methods often resulted in bloodshed, it did usually stop conflict, or it undermined the strength of other villages, once again increasing the gap between Konoha and subsequent other villages. And that brings us to the modern era of Naruto, not Boruto. Naruto and Sasuke are born, and the accumulation of all the powerful bloodlines that have come to Konoha seeking refuge in community takes shape in the form of the Konoha 12, arguably the strongest generation of shinobi in Konoha ever, and therefore the strongest generation of shinobi ever. Using the prosperity and the systems put in place by Tobirama and many of those who came before them, the Konoha 12 are able to flourish until each one of them is a high jonin to low Kage to actual god level shinobi. Arguably the weakest member of the Konoha 12 is Ino. Ino, who single-handedly runs the interrogation corps and the survey corps that keep a field over Konoha at all points, allowing Konoha to effectively understand anybody leaving or entering Konoha at any given point. This is done by registering chakra signals with Ino's survey corps, and if an unregistered chakra signal comes into Konoha at any point, Ino will know where and when. This is a borderline impenetrable defense around an already very powerful village, and that is coming from the weakest member. Kiba, who's probably the least useful member of the Konoha 12, is incredibly apt at tracking, fighting, and being a police asset. Shino, who's arguably the least talked about member of the Konoha 12, is easily high jonin to low Kage level. And if he used some of the bugs that he could use but refuses to use on moral grounds, he would be high Kage level. Not to mention, now we're getting into Boruto era, that Kakashi, in combination with the Kaminarin group, managed to usher in an era of technological advancement in Konoha, making Konoha now essentially the tech capital of the ninja world. Yes, trains run into every village, but those trains are created in Konoha. Shinobi wear, like the one that Boruto wore during the tuning exams that allowed him to create any jutsu he wanted, was created in Konoha. Because of the route set by Tobirama, Hiruzen, Tsunade, and Orochimaru, that Konoha is the center for research. So in summation, an equatorial location that allowed for agricultural advancements and advantageous ports to shipping to other countries set the groundwork for groups of people to come to this area, at which point the strongest rose to the top in form of the Senju and the Uchiha. The combination of these clans and the advancement in technological and ninjutsu research allowed Konoha to separate from other villages, backed largely by a massive income of wealth by Hashirama selling the tailed beasts, revolutionizing the way that they approach war by combining medical ninjutsus to frontline teams, allowed Konoha to earn more in shinobi missions, once again bolstering the economy. Then the combination of all these powerful bloodlines, all living under the same roof, looking to live in the most rich and prosperous country on Earth, created the strongest generation of ninja, the Konoha 12. And now the Konoha 12 are the ruling class of Konoha, while their children are also incredibly strong. But the high mobility that has now been granted by technological upgrades like the Thunder Trains has created interbreeding between villages. Look at Shikamaru and Tamari, meaning that the Senju's idea to strengthen a village is now growing out even further. Konoha's bloodline is now seeping into the outer world, making the ninja world as a whole stronger. That is why Konoha is the strongest village.
Whew. Cannot believe you made it through the entirety of that. Good job. That's a lot of information you probably didn't need access to, and yet here you are, hours later. But now that you know everything you could ever possibly need to know about all of the villages inside of Naruto, which is your favorite? Let me know in the comments below, and what gets you down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go to Vegas for a convention with my girlfriend.